OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, you're very welcome along. We've got a very busy show for you this morning. Tom Parsons, the Chief Executive of the GPA, is going to be along with us in about 10 minutes' time. We're going to preview all the weekend's LGFA action. That's the All-Ireland Football semi-finals. Both of them going ahead this weekend. Stephen is in Greece to talk to us about Bohs. We'll get to him in about half an hour's time, and loads more coming as well. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, we'd love to hear from you. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. As ever, it's Sheahan with you all the way through until 10. Eoin, football, European football, the centre of the universe last night was Belfast, and I did wonder if there was a little bit of weird trolling going on from Thomas Tuchel when he subs off his goalkeeper and lets the goalkeeper who's good at saving penalties get into goals. I don't know. I mean, you know, obviously Jordan Pickford did okay in the penalty shootout in the Euros, but that's how you do it, right?
Yeah, it's how you do it. I mean, it's interesting that Kepa is the guy being brought on in a situation like this. Obviously, he's had a very famous scenario where he's the guy being brought off and doesn't come off in the past at the club, and it works. It works. It worked for the Netherlands in, what was it, 2010 or was it 2014? I get my World Cups mixed up, and it worked last night. It's a tactic that you can utilise, and I think it just underlines that bringing on penalty takers is not exactly an overly effective technique, but bringing on a goalkeeper who is better than your other goalkeeper at saving penalties is a hell of a technique and a hell of a tactic, and it worked out. I think, you know, I mean, do we actually read into this as a real trophy, I ask you? Well, if you Google Chelsea this morning, fireworks are appearing on Google, so Google clearly the universe thinks that it's a real trophy.
I mean, it should be, right? It's not actually for charity. It wasn't initially designed for charity. It was like the two best competitions in Europe last season. They're going to play at the start of this season to kick off the new season. There's something a bit more to this than the Community Shield. Thomas Tuchel thought so. He was getting very irate. He got booked.
It's like, I mean, there's been people who've been irate at Community Shields in the past.
Well, there have, famously, yeah. Like John Giles.
I don't know. I think they're on a level par. Yes, there is. I mean, you're getting carried away with the exotic nature of two different nations going toe to toe
in Windsor Park.
In Windsor Park,
yeah.
I mean, all these different nations coming together for a multicultural celebration of football.
Yeah, and no better place than East Belfast to do it.
Well, I agree to a point. It is mad actually looking at the scenes last night, and if you had no concept of what a stadium looks like. And it's like, where do you think that stadium is? Like, you might have said Budapest or something like that. And on this very island, people are having full stadiums, and people are enjoying life a lot better than they are in other parts of the island.
We're enjoying life, aren't we? What's wrong with life?
No, we are. We're not enjoying life as much as hosting a Super Cup with a full stadium.
Fair enough. It's
not as peak enjoyment, obviously. That is as good as life gets. So
it's good to have ambitions in life, and you've set the bar very, very high there. You know, maybe someday that, and if the Aviva was ever to get that, would that be it? Your life would just be over, self-combustion time. That's it. Thanks very much. You can lay down and die happy. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, what did the Aviva get given recently? Was it the Europa League final? It was, wasn't it?
In 2062, was it?
Something like that.
Yeah.
So
it's coming back. Football's coming home.
That's top of my bucket list, to get ticket for Lansdowne Road in May of 2062.
Does the fact that Chelsea didn't play great matter in any way, or the fact that it's up against a side who are actually really good in cup football, does that help? You know, iron sharpens iron.
Maybe. I think you've probably already got my opinion on this. I don't read into this whatsoever. I actually think that the way these seasons have been packed in recent years, I'm not sure we're actually going to get a proper read on any team until well into the season. Like, let's not forget Manchester City's charge to the title didn't start in November, until November last year, when they were in the bottom half of the table. And I think something similar could happen this year.
I'm not sure. I think that if you are off the pace very early on in this season, then it's going to be very difficult for you to get back in. I think last season was such a shortened. Remember, the previous season went on so late. Obviously, this is, again, most of your best players have been around the world playing in your big competitions, your Copa Americas, your Euros, and so it's been shortened time, and there are loads of players who aren't coming back just yet. But I think that the bigger squads will have had enough players and enough time. I would expect Manchester City to hit the ground running, for example. I would expect Chelsea to hit the ground running. I would expect Man United to hit the ground running, and like Liverpool didn't have a lot of their best players at the Euros, so.
It does seem that like a lot of these teams are struggling with injuries going into the season as well, and that obviously comes from playing a lot of games over a long period of time. Like Ziyech's substitution last night and his injury, his shoulder injury, doesn't look good whatsoever. And like we mentioned him yesterday as a reason why you have hope for Chelsea, because of not because he'll be a starter by any stretch of the imagination, but he is in your 25-man squad all the time, and that's what everybody is using to judge Manchester City on. And I just felt in attack Chelsea have a similar level of depth when Lukaku arrives, and Ziyech hampers that. But City have their troubles as well. Obviously, Foden and De Bruyne are both going to be missing, aren't they, for early in the season? So it's a squad game, and I think that it'll take a few weeks for the deck to properly set itself.
Okay, all right, let's move on, because on the back pages of all of the newspapers today, the GAA have confirmed that they're sticking with the new date for the Tyrone-Kerry All-Ireland football semi-finals. That's Saturday week. Yesterday afternoon, a statement was issued by the Gaelic Players Association, and I'm delighted to say Tom Parsons, the Chief Executive of the GPA, is with us this morning. Tom, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Good morning, how are things, Ger?
It's a pretty complex situation, and I think everybody has a lot of sympathy for all of the sides involved, for you guys representing the players, for the two camps involved, and for Croke Park because of COVID. And I think with that in mind, there's been less heat in this debate than maybe there would have been around fixtures in the past. So could you maybe just bring us right up to date? What is the very latest? In your statement yesterday, you talked about offering the Tyrone squad the use of your health screening, the GPA's health screening. What is that, and are they taking you up on that offer?
Yeah, so I suppose firstly, Ger, it's a terrible position, you know, the work put in by Tyrone and all teams to get to this stage in the semi-final, and to get hit like this, it's just really the unthinkable for a team and for a player. You know, a lot of players would have put in 12 to 18 months, and for some players years to get to an All-Ireland semi-final. So I can only imagine, you know, the worry on families, on the team, and knowing the situation. And the situation, Ger, is that, you know, it looks like 50% of the squad has contracted the virus. And when you look at a squad is typically 32 to 35 players. And in that, you'll usually have 3 or 4 injuries. So it means there's only 15 or 16 players fit. So there's just so many unknowns, because, you know, in the coming days, players are returning back from isolation. And, you know, it's subjective. Symptoms and how we react to symptoms is subjective. So there's no unknowns. And I suppose in talking with the Tyrone management team, they have a fantastic screening process in place themselves. What we do with the GPA, and we've offered all teams, Ger, is that we have a very comprehensive cardiac screening and health screening that might help alleviate concern of players, or allow squads to know if they're in a position to play a game or not. No, so that's been offered to the Tyrone team, and they're in consultation with their medical team, but they have a lot of those provisions in place. So, you know, it's just a really worrying time. And, you know, from a GPA perspective, and personally, if there's one thing that would keep me awake at night, is the worry of a player, you know, players' welfare going on the field of play. And there's a worry at the moment.
Tom, could I just ask, the 50% of people that you mentioned there that have contracted COVID, is there a certain section of the squad on top of that then who aren't able to play due to being in close contact?
No, as far as I'm aware, and I haven't went in or even went asking details of who, but it looks like 50% of the squad in the here and now will be unavailable to play, or will have been in close contact or have contracted the virus, you know. So I don't have the specific details, but that is what it looks like. And, you know, some are coming out of it now, some are coming out of it at the weekend, and some on Tuesday. So, you know, it's changing. It's a very fluid situation, and that's why, you know, I think Brian Dooher said, you know, in his media this week, that we can't make a decision in the here and now because there's just so many unknowns. And I suppose in the GPA statement, you know, that's something we said, is for the Gaelic family to, you know, to give as much space as they can to allow a decision to be made, because you just don't know. And the right decision is to put the player welfare first. And from a GPA perspective, if that means, you know, standing down even on a Tuesday before a Saturday game because that's the decision that protects player welfare, that's the right decision to make.
When you say standing down, do you mean that if the Tyrone squad decide that they're not able to play, you guys are going to back them in that and ask for a postponement collectively?
Yeah, well, there's two things, and I think the GPA's position on as postponement and standing down it's very clear, like what under no circumstance can we risk player welfare. That just has to be a non-negotiable, and I think it's a non-negotiable for the GAA as well. If postponing the game by another week helps to ensure player welfare, that's the right thing to do, absolutely. But another week is no guarantee, it's subjective and it's fluid, and players are presenting and coming out of isolation over the next coming days. So, whatever the ultimate decision is to protect player welfare, either not playing the game or if 1 week does make the difference, and it may not, the GPA would support that. I think, a key message here, and I hope we all reflect on it, is that at the end of the day, it means the world to players at this level, but it is only a game of football. And players have lives, they're amateur, they have partners, they have kids in creches and schools and jobs. So we just need to put this into perspective as well. There's so many unknowns, but that certainly is the GPA's position, is player welfare is 100% paramount.
So if the screening suggests that enough of the squad are fit to play, then you guys would suggest that is the box ticked, or certainly as much as you possibly can, in terms of enough of the squad is available to play, the game should go ahead. But if enough of the players come back and the health screening suggests they're not able to play, the GPA's position would be it's not fair to play this game. In that instance, are you asking for are you as an organisation officially saying let's kick this back a week and give ourselves that breathing space to see what happens?
Yeah, if a week is deemed will help protect player welfare, yeah, absolutely, we back that. And it is challenging, and that might be the decision in the here and now. And even at that, it doesn't guarantee that the squad will be good to play. And screening too, Jared, it's objective, and it'll give you a measurement, but the subjective element is how are you actually feeling. And a player might be feeling well on a Friday, and on a Sunday just can't move and can't play the game. So it's a really difficult position, and it's a really difficult position for the management team, because, and I know personally, players will want to play. If I've done it myself. I've had crazy injuries, and I wouldn't disclose some injuries to a medical team because I wanted to play an All-Ireland semi-final or final. So players will want to represent their county and their supporters and grasp the opportunity. And that's where the risk lies. So there's so many unknowns at the moment, and I think we might know a little bit more at the weekend when the management team sees the players who are returning from isolation in action and seeing how they're presenting.
And I suppose the other thing is that, say we did push this back a week on the basis that we think that it's going to be fairer, and then suddenly an outbreak happens in the Kerry camp. It's a disaster scenario from the GAA's perspective as well. So in those terms, is it possible that this fixture won't be fulfilled and that actually Tyrone won't be able to, as you said, it is ultimately just a game of football, and if the right thing for them to do from a welfare perspective is not to play the game, is there a scenario that you envisage where Kerry could actually end up in an All-Ireland final without playing a semi-final?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the reality here. Is this is a very serious case, and the comments made by Tyrone this week, shouldn't be taken lightly, and they're not reflecting those comments lightly, that there's the risk they won't play the game. That's the words of Brian Dooher and and Fergal Logan, the management team. Decisions. This is the challenging piece. Is there's so many scenario planning and what if this happens and the ripple effect. But when you look at the hierarchy of decision making, it's player welfare, and unfortunately you need to make a decision in the here and now with what's in front of you, and that's where they're at. They just don't know in the here and now if they'll be able to fulfil the fixture, and I do think as a Gaelic family we need to give them space to really evaluate the situation in the coming days.
Is your information that all the Tyrone players are going to be out of isolation this weekend then?
I don't have the specifics, but I know a lot of them are coming out of isolation this weekend, and maybe a few even the following weekend.
And then, sorry, Tom, who is then going to be carrying out the health screening? It's somebody within Tyrone GAA, and then they will present that information to you and to the GAA. Is that how it will then work this weekend when they can do it with whoever is out of isolation?
Yeah, so look, we've offered our comprehensive health screening to the whole squad if they want to take that up. But I know they have a very comprehensive medical team themselves who carry out cardiac screening and can individually take any player to do that screening. So, there's no doubt about it. They've a fantastic medical team who have their finger on the pulse on this as well, and will be assessing players as they go. So, that the assessment, that's the objective piece. It's there's no right or wrong answer. If somebody comes out of an isolation period, that doesn't mean they're ready to play. 3 weeks' time doesn't mean they're ready to play. If a player doesn't feel well, and if that's shown on the pitch, and a player isn't meeting their max speeds and the GPS, if their heart rate or their resting heart rate is through the roof, if they look fatigued, I think they're all indications. And we have to remember as well is that this is an environment where you're going into a ferocious environment where your heart rate is going to be at 170 beats per minute. Your max speed is 32, 33 kilometers per hour, and you just don't know. Somebody might be feeling well on a day-to-day basis and not showing symptoms. When you put them into that position, that high performance position, we just don't know how they'll react. So that's the situation it's in. It's very serious and it's very worrying.
And that's the tricky part, Tom, isn't it? Because ultimately, you can make the decision that someone feels fit or doesn't feel fit, and then they play, and they either play as well as they've ever done or they don't play well. And for your organisation, standing in, you can't be definitive and say this game can't go ahead. You can't be definitive and say this game has to go ahead.
Yeah, and you can't say, the players will want to play. The last thing the players will want is myself or the GPA to say postpone the game, because they'll want to play. This is an opportunity to play an All-Ireland semi-final, and there's a cohort of players who are fit and ready to play. But all that we know at the moment is that if there's 15 or 16 healthy players, you cannot play a game without bringing in subs. So there'll be people in the here and now players in the here and now that'll be going into the field of play that will have had COVID in the last number of weeks, and there's just an unknown there. So it's a really challenging situation, and I think we all need to show compassion, and it's really challenging for Kerry as well and the other teams involved in the competition, because there's an unknown. But I think if we just respect the care of players and take a little bit of time to allow Tyrone space to assess the situation and see where things are at, even this weekend, I think that's important that the whole Gaelic family allows that to happen.
In that context, Tom, then I just wanted two final quick questions. Were you surprised that the GAA issued the formal declaration about the throw-in time and the fixtures were announced yesterday officially? This game's going ahead next week. Was that a bit of a surprise from your guys' perspective?
No, not really. Maybe that's something that they put out, and I'm sure there'll be more communication this weekend, with the lay of the land, and there might be another decision to be made. I don't know, but I know from a GPA or GAA perspective, they don't want to risk player welfare. They don't want that to happen, and there's still unknowns, and the Tyrone management team have said that we just don't know. And that's the reality, and it's not an out here, because there's no right or wrong answer in these situations. So I think we'll just have to sit tight and see what comes out at the weekend, and see what further requests come from Tyrone, and take it from there. And we'll keep in close contact with the players.
And what are the Kerry players saying to you, Tom?
Look, I suppose it's an absolute given, without even disclosing any conversations, that no player wants to put another player's welfare or well-being at risk. That's the number one priority. And I don't think any team, I remember going into All-Ireland finals, and as much as I do anything as a past Mayo player to win an All-Ireland final, if if we got news in the morning of the final that the Dublins of this world picked up a vomiting bug and can't play the game, we wouldn't want to play the game. You know, you want to win it on merit, and there's no doubt about it. Kerry will want to play fully fit Tyrone team and will want that opportunity. So it's, you know, it's challenging, but, you know, from a player's perspective, I think every single player, you know, wants to ensure the welfare of other players, and that's paramount, and that's a given.
Just one last one for me, Tom. This is obviously an unprecedented situation, especially given the scale that you've outlined of the cases in the Tyrone camp. We did see something relatively similar last year with the Sligo football team, for example, and they were turfed out of the championship. They didn't get a chance to postpone. Did they make any lobbying, or did they have any conversations with the GPA around that time to try and get postponements?
Yeah, no, that happened very quick last year, and to be honest, it's like every decision nearly needs to be made in isolation, and it's probably very different too, because it was, you know, an early stage of COVID, and GA and Gaelic games trying to find their feet with fixtures, and also it was at the start of a competition, so there's probably a difference here because there's three teams left, you know, so it's not upsetting the whole ecosystem of the competition. So, you know, at the time, I can't remember the details of the time if there was huge lobbying, but I don't think there was. And, you know, it's hard. Some people are saying that, you know, has this precedence been set with other teams? I really think in a global pandemic that we need flexibility in decision making and weigh up what's the decision in front of you. And the decision in front of us here is that it's at the very tail end of a season. There's 3 teams left. Most counties could go on and push on with their club season. You know, this is an unprecedented 50% of the squad. So we just need to just keep that in mind and be completely respectful. This isn't, you know, having one rule for one team and another rule for others. Like, it's just the stage of a competition with teams left, and, you know, and regardless from a GPA perspective, it's welfare, it's protecting the welfare and the well-being of players.
Tom, good stuff. We'll let you go. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Tom Parsons, the Chief Executive of the GPA there. And what do you make of this? The 50% of the squad, we kind of heard that figure bandied about, but that's it confirmed this morning for us. And also the fact that some players won't be coming out of isolation until next weekend anyway. So you could be coming out of isolation and then playing an All-Ireland semi-final against Kerry. It's a very tough scenario.
Yeah, it is. It's a desperate situation for Tyrone in particular, and I think as well there are so many different complicated layers to this that I wouldn't be surprised if there were people in the Tyrone camp who thought one way and people in the Tyrone camp who didn't think the same way. And I mean, that's just the nature of this beast, that I'm sure there are lads out there who are raring to go and fully healthy, let's not forget that, and are willing to go as soon as their teammates get out of isolation. Then I'm sure there are some of the team who are just getting out of isolation. They're like, lads, I mean, as he said, the objective health screening, the objective part of it is only half of it. How they actually feel could be a totally different story, and they could be like, lads, I'm not ready to play.
Well, some of the people could be asymptomatic as well. That's the other part of it.
Yeah.
Like, and some people won't have any impact on them. So and it depends on what proportion of that team were already vaccinated, and whether or not they've had one vaccine or 2 vaccines, and not all of a sudden then you're into, you know, we're not going to pry about the individual details of any of the people on the panels, but fairly difficult situation for everybody involved. It'll be very interesting to see when that screening comes back what impact it has, and what's the go no go point. Where is it like 5 of the 15 are showing residual symptoms? Okay, that's grand. You've got enough in the remaining 25 of your squad members, but what if those 5 are your 5 best players? You know, like, how does this work?
There is no precedent for that, unfortunately, and that is why I fear for Tyrone in this if they want to get the game pushed back another week. And I think it was quite pointed from the GAA yesterday in sending tickets out to the club members of Tyrone and Kerry who'd got their tickets, and to fixing the All-Ireland final time and fixing the Tyrone rescheduled time.
But they have to do that? You think it's a power move?
Sure. A little bit. I think that there was... I understand that they have to do it ASAP, and the sooner the better and all that, but it did feel a little bit like this was a very developing story, and they had to go out and publish that information yesterday, and it felt like a line in the sand where it was like, lads, we're not moving, we're not budging, we've already given you a week. Our information is that the vast majority of you will be allowed to roam free before throw-in time, and that's all we care about. Fair enough if you're all locked up and you literally cannot leave your own house, then we might have something to consider. But if their information is that you have to roam free, then you can see why somebody will say we just have to play the fixture, because then, as you say, it comes down to all these different complicated layers. What if the health screening is like 5 of our best players can't play? Does that then constitute an extra week? What constitutes an extra week?
Yeah.
And maybe the GAA weighed all that up and said nothing does as long as the players can show up.
Yeah, or if they can't show up, that's very unfortunate, and it will always be an asterisk on this season that we didn't have a second All-Ireland football semi-final, but the asterisk is actually that there was a global pandemic as opposed to you being victimised in this.
The other situation, instead of a bye, and that is the worst case scenario for everybody, would be reinstating the Ulster runners-up, and I don't think that would suit Monaghan, to be honest. I'm sure that once your season is done, it's done, and getting back up for a game just wouldn't be possible, and that would also have an asterisk beside it as well, because the Ulster Championship is the most important thing. So,
what if they came through that and beat Mayo or Dublin?
Would it be better than a walkover in the semi-final from your perspective?
Yeah, I think I can't imagine it ever happening, because the rules were no backdoor this year. And you can't have a team who's beaten back in the championship. You open yourself up to a lot of, they got back in, why don't I get back in?
Yeah, there is no. Certainly, when I'm combing through this, there is no sort of eventuality where I'm like, that's going to satisfy everyone. And as I say, I'm sure there are people in Kerry as well who are completely split on this as well. Like as Tom said, if he was coming up against a Dublin team who had a vomiting bug, he wouldn't want to play against them. I think the Kerry players probably feel the same way, that they want this game. I think they kind of need the game, to be honest with you, if you're looking at it in coldly and in a competitive level. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if there were other people who were thinking, nah, yeah, Tyrone, you've got to show up next week. But I'd say some of the players would give them as long as they want.
All right, 087 9 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can give us your thoughts on this. Should the game go ahead as it is? Should there be an extra week found in the calendar somehow at this point? If you're a Kerry supporter, we'd love to hear from you. Or if you're a Tyrone supporter, do you feel like you're being victimised, or actually is this about fair? Is a week enough time to try and get your house in order, see what's happening, and see what the crack is with that? Here's what's coming up between now and 10 a.m. As I said, a very busy show for you. We've got constructive criticism coming your way. We've got Steve-O in Greece at 8:10 talking about the Bohs game. Aisling O'Reilly on the LGFA semi-finals this weekend. John Duggan's going to join us at 8:40. Tell us what's coming up on Off the Ball on Saturday. We have Stephen Rochford standing by at 8:50. We're going to go into the matchups and some developing news from the Mayo GAA scene overnight. The whispers and rumours of a significant injury are out there now. We're going to bring you TV picks 9:10. We've got Ross and Harry Byrne for our final instalment of the Burns at 9:25, and then Billy Walsh, brilliant interview with Joe last night. I'm going to bring you that. But now, time for this.
The tag of being a little bit out there because of the social media sort of thing.
I haven't had that proper chance to understand what the rationale was.
Don't give me none of that banter, man. I'm here to talk serious football.
Good morning. The headlines. Irish shock jock Gerard Gilroy has come under further fire from the Republic of South Africa due to his comments regarding the 2021 British and Irish Lions Tour. In a video entitled "South Africa Are Whining Babies, the Worst Sport Culture on the Planet," Mr. Gilroy caused consternation in the nation with his comments. The backlash was swift. Herman van Zyl issued a swift response in the OTB YouTube comments. He said, "This Ger character is the perfect little hall monitor. What a distasteful little man." Monty the Dog, meanwhile, saw a sporting future for Mr. Gilroy. He said, "In the next Olympic Games, if the next Olympic Games has a best wee, whiny, miserable, blinkered little toe rag event, your man has it sewn up already. P.S. if he is going for a world record, to ramp up his bile, just mention Johnny Sexton or John Ryan." Meanwhile, Belson Keating came armed with a comment on nationality and his cap lock button. He said, "Bitter little leprechauns barely able to disguise their spiteful envy at the Springboks' dominance. Truly pathetic." That's Belson Keating there, Mr. Keating, commenting on leprechauns. Stein Zvigalar, known for his accurate statements, didn't stray from the facts when he said, "F you for taking a swipe at our rugby culture. Rugby is a contact sport, not Lord of the Dance, a sing-song, or St. Patrick's Day." John Stevenson then suggested that the programme looked closer to home. "Did these guys see Conor Muppet and Alan Whine Jones? SA didn't whine on the field." Mr. Gilroy's comments about the underage doping culture in South Africa rugby received a swift response from Hamlet Henneke, who said, "Doping culture? My man, over a century of rugby brilliance, rugby runs through our veins as South Africans. We eat and sleep rugby from the dusty fields at the Paulus Joubert Primary and New Orleans High in Parle to the flashy green fields of Paul Roos Gym and Grey College in Bloom. We breed them, the DNA runs strong, and that is what the Springboks represent. Diversity, our pride and glory. We can't help it that we win titles. Until you prove us wrong, you can never smoke pipe with us. Just ask the All Blacks and Wallabies about what it takes. When the Irish start winning, they can come drink tea with us. Doping. But you scoop up our players in your leagues and national teams and they dominate, get titles and get man of the matches. I guess it's from all the doping, like CJ Stander has. LOL. Sins Nyand offered a different theory for the shocking comments of this shocking jock. He said, "Lol. No wonder the views on this channel are so poor. I love the hurt talk from these mugs because I'll never forget how Ireland sabotaged South Africa's bid to host the World Cup a few years ago after it was clear South Africa were favourites to become hosts."
Wow, did we?
Apparently. Now, given the volatility of the situation, many commenters wondered what the reality of the situation was, what was really going on in the dark mind of shock jock Gerard Gilroy. Psychologist Dr. Bradley Rogerson said, "This host guy is seriously bitter and twisted." Psychotherapist Professor Saul Hudson said, "He really does look like someone whose world is just crumbling to the ground. He needs help. If the Boks had lost, I would have just had another beer and then gotten on with my life." While Dirk Short, not a professor or doctor, but as respected because he is a YouTube commentator, said, "P.S. The very broad statements made by the host of this radio show about South African supporters and current and retired players is a huge insult. I have listened to this radio host's recordings a few times, and one might say that it sounds unhinged." And it's been a sad conclusion to what was an upbeat tour. A week ago, before that bitter final test, Dion Richards appeared in the YouTube stream telling us of his delightful plans for the third test. He said, "I would like to thank every member of the Springboks and British and Irish Lions team for the promotion of World Rugby. Last week, Saturday, I proudly watched the game wearing my Springbok jersey. The whole game was a highlights package for me. The passion and intensity was amazing. Yes, I know rugby experts will say it was a dirty and foul game, but to me it was as potent as poison. I felt the tackles and swore at the ref and shouted abuse at the stupid comments made by the commentary team, for example, Piano Front Row. But after the game, I felt exhausted, knackered as my English friends would say. At one point, I wanted to lift my green and gold jersey to check for any stud marks on my back or any serious bruising to my ears. This Saturday, I will be cheering for my nation. My Netflix will take a back seat. I will give my wife my credit card to visit the Mall of Qatar. But nothing, absolutely nothing, will take me away from a mouth-watering and brutal encounter between the gladiators of rugby. Whoever is the referee, Waterboy, TMO or anthem singer, I will be glued to my television to watch this series decider." Now, of course, many OTB reporters tried to harness this positive energy, and last week positive talks emerged between a number of team members and Bobby Skinstad, as you can see on screen. However, the chirpy mood was quickly dispelled after the public comments made by YouTube user David Lawler. He released a statement saying, "The only thing wrong with this is talking to these awful frauds of presenters. South Africa are world champions. Bobby, hang up on these clowns." The moment topped off a bad news week for both Nathan Murphy and for Eoin Sheahan. Firstly, OTB head of content Nathan Murphy tweeted his jubilation in response to the Mayo County hurling team winning the Nicky Rackard Cup in Croke Park, saying, "Mayo winning a lot of trophies in Croke Park these days. No need to at me." However, this jubilation was swiftly destroyed after the arrival of truth bombs on the scene. He replied to OTB's head of content saying, "You truly are the dickhead of content." Eoin Sheahan, meanwhile, received a memo from @Coldspin not long after the bank holiday weekend, saying, "Eoin Sheahan, oi rusty balls, can you get off the rugby commentary? It's ruining us for us. Now go fuck yourself. Thumbs up." Those are the headlines for this week. Thank you for joining us.
The tag of being a little bit out there because of the social media sort of thing.
I haven't had that proper chance to understand what the rationale was.
Don't give me none of that banter, man. I'm here to talk serious football.
All right, 4 minutes past 8. Time for us. There's some more, isn't there? Actually, sorry. Yeah, I always forget about these ones, the extra ones. Right. There were some late additions to this, and I've just deleted them. That wasn't very clever of me, was it?
Do I have an email including them somewhere? Oh, there's a lot of stuff on Lionel Messi. We had Graham Hunter on with us a couple of times last week after the Lionel Messi saga almost reached its conclusion. Rachel in our comments said, "Messi is a victim. I've heard it all now. On what planet is Leo Messi a victim? And this has certainly been one of the common threads over the last couple of days about people feeling sorry for Lionel Messi.
The disrespect how good a fully fit Liverpool squad is ridiculous. 1-10 on the bounce to finish third with half a squad last season. When the season, I mean, I guess that the end of the season was pretty good and they started to recapture some of their form, and Nathan was at pains to point out that Trent was Liverpool's best player over the last 6 or 7 games last season, when there was never any doubt that he was going to be part of Gareth Southgate's squad. So I don't know. Yeah,
that was in response to our crystal ball discussion, where Liverpool have clearly been shown a lot of disrespect and not really been brought into the title conversation a lot. And it's an interesting one. I definitely felt it at the end of last season that this was a team that were ready to bounce back and actually have a right crack at it this year. And maybe the whole conversation around Jurgen Klopp and will he, won't he be Liverpool manager this time next year actually strengthens Liverpool's case, because if this is last season, there is like one last burst of energy from him in the dressing room on the sideline, and the players know it, and a couple of the players who may be edging towards their post-peak playing days are also in that state of that mindset as well. So I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever to see them go all the way for sure. So maybe there was a bit of disrespect towards them just because we tipped Chelsea and Manchester City mostly yesterday, but Liverpool, I think everybody is for sure have an outside shot. Yeah, well, I was Sadio Mane and Roberto Firmino's form so good last season that you could say that they're back to the level that they were at when they were winning the league? I don't think it was. That's the issue, that everything has to go right for Liverpool from early in the season to the end of the season for them to be able to beat the depth that Manchester City have and the depth that Chelsea have as well. So let's wait and see. Eamon Devlin says, I'd love a Mayo Tyrone final. Be a novel. Been a while since we heard from you, Dev. 7 minutes past 8 this morning here. If you want to get in touch, do please. 087 918 180 is the WhatsApp number. Or, of course, you can always leave a comment on the YouTube stream, and maybe you will make the constructive criticism next week. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Stephen Doyle is standing by. We're going to get to him next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, our new weekly Gaelic football show with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran.
Yes, Dublin aren't in great form, but they're bored out in their mind time. Paul Mannion and Jack McCaffrey aren't playing, yes, because of the stress and strain, but they're a bit bored, like. They're mid-20s, they should be still playing football for Dublin. The likes of Conor O'Callaghan needs a Mayo coming to Croke Park, needs to be playing a Kerry in an All-Ireland final to really get themselves going, and I think that's where it's at. Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
I know you spoke earlier in the season about having signed, technical players that you feel could really perform in Europe. You've got some players that have come through the academy that can do that as well. Dawson Devoy, Ross Tierney, Andy Lyons, for instance. Do you think that kind of surprised PAOK, that the style of play that you always hear managers before Ireland international games or games against club teams from Ireland talking about the physical aspect of Irish teams? Do you think that surprised them maybe a bit last week?
Well, I think it's a lazy narrative for anybody to have about Irish teams in Europe. We have some technical players, some players that can command and get on the ball, put their foot on the ball, and see passes, play on the ball and get us passing and getting us, moving through the lines and getting us playing forward. Like I said, I think it's too easy to stereotype Irish teams. Look at Dundalk's performance away in Holland last week. McElhaney's goal, superb goal. Shamrock Rovers have a brilliant chance to progress tomorrow night. It's too easy, like I said, to pigeonhole teams from Ireland to say that we're just one-dimensional, that we play direct and we're big and physical and we'll run all day and we'll try really hard. I think you know, there were moments in the first leg that we showed our quality, and we would like to think that we can come here tomorrow night and we'll try and stick to our values, our principles, how we want to try and play. Recognise that as well that the level of the opposition is high. The conditions will be difficult in terms of the heat, but we'll try and, like I said, stay true to the principles that we want to try and implement, and we will stick to our game plan and try and play the way this team can play and play to our strengths.
Keep long there in conversation with Stephen Doyle, who's actually in Greece. Stephen, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger.
What's the weather like as a matter of interest?
Yeah, it's really hot. It got up to about 38, 39 degrees yesterday. We woke up yesterday morning and it was just, in fact, when we got off the plane on Tuesday when we arrived here, it was just, that sensation when you get off a plane into a hot country and they just open the door and you just get this bang of heat just hit you in the face. And then it kind of cools down a little bit in the evening time, but like even at its coolest, at night time, we're talking, it's only gone down to about 26, 27 degrees. Getting up yesterday morning, first thing in the morning, and only for the brilliant air conditioning in the hotels, you wouldn't think it's so hot outside, but then
the heat is getting to the Wi-Fi in Greece, it turns out. Looks like a nice little setup. That is that's going to be pretty restrictive for Irish footballers out on the pitch tonight playing in that sort of heat, especially given the kick-off time as well, a little bit earlier in the day, maybe a couple of hours. Maybe it was an 8 o'clock kick-off, you could have been like, it might be a few degrees cooler, not to mention the actual quality that they're up against tonight as well. It's going to be quite a big evening for all the Irish clubs. Steve obviously commentating for Bohs. Hopefully we'll get him back in a moment, but Keith Long there, I guess, flying the flag for the conversation around Irish football, which we see kind of played out quite a lot on the international scene. And obviously when it comes to these teams in Europe, it manifests itself on the League of Ireland front as well.
Well, I think, and that's really important, this week is a huge week. This week, and if the teams progress, fingers crossed, for that self-confidence that the league has across Europe, for that sense of identity that the league has, because the teams who are in Europe are our best footballing teams, and the teams who are thriving at the moment are our best footballing teams, and they're all managed by managers who want to play football in the right way and who talk about it in the right way and who have cultivated those technical players. And I think that point that Stephen made in that interview there, where like you're looking for those technical players, you're bringing them in, that's what your academy is belching out now as a matter of course. Like, they just need some further breakthroughs to get to a point where there are group stages of European football, because that transforms a club's ability to plan, and ideally when there are fans back in stadiums, it means the match going experience is an excellent one, all that kind of stuff, that all of a sudden becomes a rolling ball as opposed to this desperately sunken thing that you're trying to shift.
And you're also kind of, one of the reasons of why these regular qualifications, and I know this hasn't been a thing for Bohs, but it certainly has been for someone like Dundalk, regular paths through Europe, is that you actually kind of get good at handling the off-the-field elements of everything that comes with it, handling the finances that you win as a result of getting through these stages. And I know that there's obviously been a fairly checkered past, certainly in the 2000s, of Irish clubs going on these European voyages, making a windfall, and then maybe not spending properly or expecting there to be future windfalls and relying too much on future earnings and all that sort of stuff, and it leads to just financial mismanagement. By and large, it does seem that these clubs are better set up now to actually capitalise on this properly and in a sustainable way. It's helped that, as you say, that the product that is being played is actually quite attractive in some cases. I think we're starting to finally see the drip feed of the Brexit situation on these Irish clubs as well. Like, especially with Bohs, you're seeing a couple of young players who may or may not be playing in England now if things were different. Now, I know the obvious person is Dawson Devoy, who would have been with Watford and came home, so that's nothing really to do with that. But even someone like Jamie Mullins, for example, who's only 16 at the moment, what would the path have been were there no restrictions with Britain at the moment? Maybe it would be exactly the same, and I know these clubs are in a much better place to actually keep these kids at home, and maybe they're all starting to realise as well that actually maturing in Ireland is the way to go first before making that voyage, if it does happen. So I don't know. There's a lot to be kind of really positive about from this European journey, the European journeys that these clubs are on at the moment, and what it tells us about the wider state of Irish football.
There's definitely been seasons where there were, 3 clubs in Europe, and they would go out after defeats in their first match, and it would be like 0 wins, or there might have been a draw in the 6 games that were played. And maybe sometimes 1 or 2 teams. And then obviously there have been those incredible campaigns that we know all the way back to Michael O'Neill and Shamrock Rovers side. But it feels like there's a consistency to the results at this point. And look, that may well be because of the recalibration of European competitions, and we're now playing at a level where these teams should be progressing. But like, that's good in and of itself. That's progress.
Yeah, and that's like definitely one of the things that kind of I'm interested in at the moment, that whenever UEFA do anything, no matter what it is, if it's allocating tickets, if it's setting a venue, I'm always sceptical of anything UEFA and FIFA and every sporting organisation internationally does. But whether or not it was a cynical move or not, whether or not it was a money-spinning move or not to bring the Conference League into existence, if they were saying from the outset that this is an opportunity to give smaller nations, nations with smaller leagues, an opportunity to succeed, I think they've kind of held up that end of the bargain, because the early signs are that this thing is going to work out quite well for the Irish clubs.
Yeah, and obviously, we know the quality of the team that PAOK have, and as a result of that, the result that Bohs got in the first leg was fairly sensational. So we'll try and get Steve back a little bit later on as the lines improve, as the Wi-Fi improves. But in the meantime, let me bring you through what's going on in the sports pages. It's 16 minutes past 8 here this morning on OTB AM. The Lions will struggle for viewers playing like that. That's Ron O'Gara speaking to Off the Ball last night. Jean Todt opens up on consequences of Michael Schumacher accident. It's Formula 1. Bohs fans told not to attend PAOK game as long revels in underdog status. And Curtis Jones missed the opening Premier League game for Liverpool, so we're starting to get team news through for the weekend as well. And Jordan Henderson again, proving himself to be an articulate and important voice in English football, says it's very simple. We are protesting against racism. That's why their English footballers are continuing to take the knee despite all the criticism. And you wait for the boos from the English football fans, but the players are united and they're going to continue to take the knee as well. So some sports pages for you very quickly. Back page of the Star this morning, super sub. That's Kepa coming on to save the day for Chelsea last night. Long's plead to Tomb Raiders. He's urging his close fans not to seek entry to the game this evening. GA sticking to New Day's Carlo Kane story, and Messi's PSG Euro dream. Lionel Messi wants to win the Champions League.
What?
The Herald this morning, he's looking for 5. His drive for 5 stars. The Herald says Greek god's not immortal long. And they also have a picture there of Hakim Ziyech celebrating after scoring, but he did go off with a fairly nasty looking shoulder injury, and so he's going to be out for a while. It looks like Tyrone Carey unlikely to be pushed back any further, says Donncha Boyle. The back page of the Daily Mirror, Kepa the Fate, and that's him saving penalties last night in the penalty shootout. Luke's in. Kepa's star of shootout. Rom arrives to sign deal. Leo King of Europe. Perth sure of League of Ireland standing, and no can do an extension. That's Brian Dooher not getting an extension. No can do. The Daily Mail back page headline: Super Kepa goes ballistic. Something are atrocious. Nobody was atrocious in a 1-1 draw and penalty shootout, were they? All Ireland will throw in early to avoid soccer clash at 3:00 Saturday afternoon. All Ireland football final on Saturday the 4th of September. What do you make of that, Eoin?
It feels weird, doesn't it?
It's a full weekend of Kerry lads on the absolute tear. Are you ready for it?
The thing is, you have your art defined for a 3:30 throw-in. So I wonder, will the special train go that half an hour early? The one that they always get. Will the routines, will the Gresham be flooded just 30 minutes earlier? It'll be like All Ireland final day, but 30 minutes earlier.
Right, I think we could re-establish contact to Greece. Stephen, one of the things we were talking about there was the quality of football that the teams are playing. All 3 Irish teams in action in Europe at the moment are playing excellent football. Their philosophy is to play good football. So it's an absolutely massive week for Irish club football.
Yeah, absolutely, Ger. And in fact, in fairness to Bohemians as well, they can mix it up because they've got one of the star players of the season so far, Georgie Kelly. He's got 16 goals altogether this season. 12 of those in the league, 4 in Europe, and he's a target man. So if they do need to go long, prefer to keep him. And as I said, that piece with Keith, he signed a couple of players like Liam Burt and Ali Coote, who are that kind of Tariq Wilson as well, the left back, who are those kind of small, very technically proficient footballers, as well as his own players that he's brought through from the academy, like Ross Tierney and Andy Lyons and Dustin Devoy. So they can play both ways, and I think that kind of caught PAOK on the hop last week. I don't think they're expecting that. There was the usual tropes and stereotypes about Irish teams playing good, hard, pacey football. I think that kind of caught PAOK on the hop, which obviously they'd be prepared for that tonight. But as we were saying there just before the line went, the heat is going to be a factor. It's about 38, 39 degrees. We're hoping that around kick-off time, is down at the stadium last night, the Toomba Stadium. It's a magnificent ground. It looks absolutely fantastic. But down on pitch level at around that time, kick-off time last night, it was about 30, 31 degrees. Now, the other key thing about that is that if it drops, or if it is 32 degrees at kick-off time, both teams will be allowed to have water breaks, one per half. So that, of course, would be quite important for Bohemians if they can get those water breaks in. They'd be, pretty happy about that. So we'll be hoping that, if it is going to be hot tonight, if it stays up around 32, they'll be able to get those water breaks during the two halves.
You are now making the case here inadvertently that Bohemians should just park the bus tonight because A, they're protecting a lead, and B, it'll catch them on the hop because they're expecting the Harlem Globetrotters to come out tonight.
No, as you know, Eoin, you're on a sticky wicket there if you start parking the bus with a team like this. And it's one thing trying to play your own style of football in this heat, but if you're trying to defend without the ball for 90 minutes against a team that has the quality that PAOK has, you're just going to be losing energy really at a very fast rate throughout the game. So I do think it took Bohemians about 20 minutes to settle into the game last week. For about 15 to 20 minutes, PAOK had the better of the football without being too spectacular. They were the better side. And, just before Bohemians got the goal and from the time after the goal, they were absolutely magnificent. They just grew in confidence. They were knocking the ball around, brilliant passing. And if they can do that, I think from the off tonight, I think that's what they need to try and do, and try and get an early goal. Because I was speaking to a couple of the journalists here in Thessaloniki, lads, and they're saying that if the first 10 to 15 minutes, if PAOK don't play well, the supporters here are going to start getting edgy and they'll start turning on the players, and the players will get nervous. And they've seen that here. They've seen evidence of that before with this team. So if Bohemians can play the first 15 to 20 minutes as the better side, that could really play into Bohemians' hands, and it could disadvantage PAOK. Look, their managers under pressure. 3 Greek teams have already gone out of Europe. Olympiacos, AEK and Aris have all gone out. So PAOK are the last team for pressure in many ways going into this game tonight. So, hopefully for Bohemians, if they can play that opening 20 minutes really well, and the fans who are, they're quite boisterous here. We're expecting 18 to 19,000 of them. There normally would be more. There's 80% fans allowed in under the COVID restrictions. But the ultras, the Gate 4 supporters, they're protesting against the COVID restrictions in the stadium. So they're staying away, and they're going to be protesting outside the stadium as well against the government of Greece because they're not happy with the COVID restrictions.
You are starting to dream.
So that means they tend to be in around 18, 19,000. So it's...
You are starting to dream, Stephen, here. That's what it sounds like. You're believing.
Well, I was speaking to Trevor Crowley, the assistant manager for Bohemians last night. He used to play for St. Patrick's Athletic, and he played. I asked him yesterday, had he ever played in heat as intense as this? And he recalled a match against Rijeka of Croatia for St. Pat's, and they played in similar heat to this. And Pat's got a 2-2 draw. And, if Bohemians could get a 2-2 draw tonight, that would be just the ticket. That's going to put them through, obviously, with the 2-1 advantage from last week. So, look, lads, I'm being realistic here. Bohemians are really up against it. PAOK are the favourites, and there's no doubting that. They've got some really quality players. There's talk of making 2 changes tonight. They're bringing a guy called Kurtic, who's...
Oh. Well, we did well.
I think so. There was definitely a good 2-minute spell in there.
That's Steve-O out in Greece. We'll hear from him on the show tomorrow after whatever happens, and I hope he's right because it would be a big win for Bohs to get through to the final qualifier before the group stage, and I think, look, that would be a transformative moment for them as well. Some news coming through this morning. Brendan Maher has announced his retirement from Tipperary hurling, obviously one of the great Tipperary hurling careers in modern times. The Tipperary website is just confirming him. After 13 years playing with Tip, I've decided that now is the right time to announce my retirement from intercounty hurling. I want to thank the Tip players sincerely. I've made lifelong friendships with so many of them, grateful to the managers and backroom teams who gave me so much support and guidance. The intercounty game requires very significant commitment. I'm happy that I can look back on my career with no regrets, having given everything that I could during my time with Tipperary. And he goes on to, lucky to have had such constant support and encouragement from my fiancée Aoife. She's helped me get through the toughest of times, and being able to share so many wonderful moments with her has made it all extra special. I looked up to my 3 older brothers, Sean, Declan and Martin, to whom I'm very grateful for instilling such self-belief and will to win in me. My parents, Johnny and Anne, have done everything they possibly could to support and encourage me, and there are no words to describe my gratitude to them. So I wish Tip all the best for 2022 and beyond. I've no doubt the players and management will do everything in their power to bring more success to the county in the years ahead. So Brendan Maher brings the curtain down on a really brilliant career. From the moment he arrived on the intercounty scene to the moment that he left, he was somebody who really typified what has been brilliant about that Tipperary team over the last 15 years or so. So 13 years playing intercounty, he's decided to step down, and we wish him all the very best on his retirement. He's going to be a brilliant analyst. You can just tell from the way that he talks about the game as well, heading into the future, that he is somebody who is going to be absolutely worth listening to. And maybe that's the start of a lot of retirements for that Tipperary team. We're not wishing anybody out the door. They'll all do it in their own time, but you wouldn't be terribly surprised if several of those players went. And then it's going to be very interesting to see. There was a piece by Michael Byrne in the papers yesterday about the managerial merry-go-round in hurling. Davy's obviously available and out there, and will Liam Sheedy stick on with that new crop of youngsters who are coming through? Because there's a bang of all of those great Tipperary teams who had essentially an infusion of kids that get them over the line, and it felt like they might be able to repeat the trick, but maybe next year is the year where they get back up to the standards that essentially Limerick are setting at the moment. So that's a fantastic career, and we wish him all the best in his retirement.
Yeah, another one of those young hurler of the years gone from around that period at the end of the 2000s into the early 2010s. There was 08, 09, 10. It was Joe Canning, Noel McGrath, Brendan Maher there, and all three of them, I think it's fair to say, have gone on to have unbelievable inter-county careers. And it's, I don't know, you start to feel just a little bit older when you're like, oh, these people are now actually retiring from hurling. It's interesting as well, he's 32. Obviously, it comes from a place of being so young when he started and getting his break in that Tip team so young when he started. But that seems to be the time in a player's life now where I guess retirement starts to come into your mind, whereas it used to be just a little bit older than that.
Yeah, okay. One of the other stories that is coming out at the moment is around Gaelic football, and this is, I don't know, is this just the rumour mill in the week of an All-Ireland football semi-final, or is there something a bit more to this? The news is coming through this morning that there are now doubts about whether or not Oisín Mullen will be fit for the game against Dublin this weekend. It is in the Connacht Telegraph that Mayo are facing a major injury concern. There are reports that he has suffered an injury that would keep him out of this weekend's clash. Now, Oisín Mullen's obviously very young still, but has immediately established himself as a leader in the team and as one of the most important players in that side. Owen, does this change all of the predictions about what might happen this weekend?
Yeah, it does, of course. I think that one of the criticisms maybe we've had at Dublin this season is that their bench maybe isn't what it used to be. I think when you analyse it, I think the hypocrisy is that you're depending on Mayo's starting 15 delivering quite a bit as well. So every player who drops from that team at the moment is a massive loss, not least when it's a player who has stormed onto the inter-county scene, a brilliant defender, an outstanding attacker from defence. And I think this will be a massive blow for Mayo going into the weekend. And I guess it has shifted a little bit the conversation around these two teams. Like after the Galway win, for example, if you wanted to do an analysis of the semi-final then, even before Dublin had won the semi-final, you were like, well, Dublin are going to be without John Small and Owen Merchant, and Mayo are fully loaded in defence. All of a sudden, 2-3 weeks later, we're like, oh, Oisín Mullen is out and Merchant and John Small are back. So I would say that department has shifted firmly back in Dublin's favour. as a result of this, and it's so unfortunate, some of the injuries that Mayo have had this year.
Yeah, so we were just talking about a former Young Hurler of the Year, obviously Oisin Mullen, an All-Star 2020 Young Footballer of the Year, and the Connacht Telegraph this morning reporting that he is facing the prospect of missing the game against Dublin. He's sustained a quad strain which threatens to rule him out of the match. Now, do you strap him up, inject him and try and get him through, or do you just accept that, like, you know, you're going to have to try and win this game without him?
Well, that's interesting that it's a quad strain. I hadn't seen that. Is that the sort of thing that you can get over if you get to an All-Ireland final in time?
Yeah.
So
it depends on how bad the strain is, obviously. If it's a rip or if it's tear or like...
strain is fairly vague, I guess.
Exactly. That could be the end of the season. Obviously, this is all still... it has not been reported by the Mayo camp officially, but it is being reported in the Connacht Telegraph this morning. So that story is there now, out there, and very, 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 very worrying. So we'll wait and keep a close eye on that. And who was saying that they were watching the Kerry game? Was it Tommy was saying earlier? He was saying watching one of the Kerry games, and the opening line of commentary was, after all the doubts during the week, James O'Donoghue takes his place today. So we know that the flames of any kind of rumours about injuries and training end up getting fanned. But equally, there has been more substance more often than not to many of these stories. So look, we wish him all the best, and we really hope that he's going to be fit to take his place this weekend. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. So let's move on. We want to talk about the women's semi-finals which are taking place this weekend. Aisling O'Reilly joins us. Aisling, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. Good, thanks.
So this is Meath Pride Week on OTB AM. It's Meath Pride Week every week when Tommy's around, but particularly since you were very bold last week making the prediction that Meath were going to reach the All-Ireland final. Now that the game is imminent, how do you feel about your prediction?
Yeah, I know, I was very bold, but I think the good thing, I know I went on a little bit probably about Meath, but they're backing it up, so that's a good thing. I know Tommy, sometimes we're talking about Meath lads and they don't back it up, so at least the ladies are doing it, and I do think that they can do it this weekend. It would be a massive shock for a lot of people. It won't be a shock to me, but it'll be a massive shock maybe to ladies football. You know, they're playing with no fear. They've nothing to lose, and there's something in that coming up from the intermediate into senior where you're just told basically to survive. That's what teams do. And even Eamon Murray, the manager, he said after the last game against Armagh that, you know, I thought I'd be in this position maybe in 2 or 3 years. I knew the girls could do it, but I just can't believe I'm in an All-Ireland semi-final. So yeah, I think they're just going out there just playing with no fear, and yeah, the style of football they're playing is just brilliant to watch.
It will be one of the more remarkable turnarounds in Irish sport if they manage to win this weekend. Like, in the space of 6 years, the specific opponent will have gone from beating Meath by 40 points to being beaten by Meath. So if they win this weekend, that is the level of turnaround we're talking about in just 6 years.
It's honestly madness. I hope the girls actually don't hear this sort of thing and they just keep this out of their minds. But it really is up there with a remarkable turnaround. Like, it's a great story. It really is. What they've done is incredible. You know, I remember seeing that result of a 40-point loss to Cork, and that was a major turning point in Meath ladies football. I remember sitting with a lot of the girls. I was playing out in New York at the time, with a lot of the girls are on the panel now, and we all did turn to each other and we're like, whoa, we're in a bad state here. Like, what's going on? And I did hear, like, it was a bit of a gather up that day. You know, messages went out trying to get girls to play. It was really bad situation. But look at the turnaround. Like, it's just unbelievable to see what they've done in that short time, 6 years, you know. So yeah, it'll be some story if they can get over the line.
Just not to labour the point too much, but what has happened? How did they manage to turn around? What were the systems that were put in place? Is it key individuals? Is it a decision making that we're going to invest in youth who are now actually finally coming to fruition, or was it just a penny dropped somewhere?
Yeah, definitely youth coming through. Like, you could definitely see with the minors not coming through. They were winning All-Irelands. The under-16s were winning All-Irelands. The minors were winning All-Irelands. It was coming through. You could see this group of players that were the next, you know, Meath team. So I think Eamon Murray has to take a lot of credit. You know, he stayed with them. He was with them at the minor level when they won the All-Ireland. And then, you know, he sort of bided his time and then got up there with the seniors when those girls got up there. So yeah, I do think it was a lot of youth coming through, but just going to intermediate, like, it just shows what it can do, that if you do drop down You know, you can build again. Yeah, you have a bit of hope. You have something to play for. I think that says a lot, you know, going out knowing that you're going to get bet by Cork by 40 points, you know, no one's too motivated for that. So at least, you knew going into the intermediate championship, look, girls, we have a chance to sort things out here. We can change it all up and we can take it one step at a time. And that's exactly what they've done. And obviously the coaching, you can see it, their style of play, their coaching has been absolutely brilliant. And then obviously they have the talent within the team then just to back it all up.
Okay, why else are you confident about it? Apart from the surge and the confidence and the momentum that the Meath women's football team have, the other thing I think that's giving you a bit of confidence is that Cork are just a little bit off where we think they should be given the quality that's in the team.
Yeah, like obviously we know Cork for a long time. We can see what they can do, the experience that they have. And I've just been watching them this year and just thinking there's just something not clicking. You know, they're just a little bit off their normal standards for Cork. Look, wouldn't write them off. You don't know what can happen outcome an All-Ireland semi-final, you know, but there definitely is some weaknesses in there. I think as well, there's questions over Orla Finn. She's obviously their free taker, big player for them. She came off injured against Meath in the very first championship game. She didn't play against Tip. She played again against a part of the game against Waterford and come off again. So I don't know if she's going to be fit enough to play this weekend. So she's a big loss in there. Doireann O'Sullivan coming back from injury. She's a major player for them. So they have these question marks when we wouldn't normally have these question marks over Cork. There is some doubts in there now. Also, I suppose that their game against Waterford, you know, it was 6 points in the end, but they were really made fight for it. Waterford had a sin bin. They had lost girls to COVID actually, and a lot of them couldn't play. So that was a big effect on the game. So it was all these things that sort of went in their favour that day to get them over the line. So there's definitely question marks on the type of play they're playing this year and if they will be able to get over the line. It's just a few weaknesses is what I can see, I think.
And are Meath experienced enough and good enough just yet to take advantage of that? Or like certainly the odds are heavily in favour of Cork on the basis that they are the team who've been there at this level and done it over the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think Meath love that. I think that they are just like on a high going in as underdogs. They're loving this, no pressure, just do what we can do our best. Like this is the attitude you get from them. Anything now is a bonus. Obviously, they want to go in and win an All-Ireland semi, but you know, you really get that attitude of nothing to lose here. And I do think they have the experience. Like they played the league final in Croke Park against Kerry. That was a shock win, supposedly. I knew they could do it. Then the headlines against Armagh, shock win against Armagh. You know, they're loving this. So I do think they have the experience because they played the All-Ireland final there as well. So watching them in Croke Park is becoming a norm, which I never thought I'd say. So yeah, I do think that they have it in their locker to have that experience too. Look, you can't write off Cork, you never could, but I just do think that Meath could do it this weekend. And
none of those wins have necessarily been fluky or in some cases close. Like it was a 7-point win against Armagh. It was pretty comprehensive against Kerry as well. Well, they were certainly a far better team on the day. But like the 7-point win against Armagh is almost the most notable result in the entire championship so far.
Yeah, that was the result that I said to myself, that if they do this, we know where they're at. We really know what type of Meath team we have in our hands here. And yeah, they were unbelievable. Like they were running rings. Like at one point, like only that Amy Mackin stood up, she got 1-6 in the end. You know, she was scoring from outside the D constantly. And that's what they done. They pushed them out. They made them take their scores from far out. They blocked up that D. There was no getting through. Just Armagh were rattled. It was crazy to watch. They were making little mistakes. Hand passes were going wrong. And they just didn't do their homework, I don't think, Armagh. Like, they didn't look into the system that Meath play, and they were sort of doing circles, wondering what's going on here. Meath were running from every corner, and positions don't really matter on that Meath team, it seems. You know, you could have the corner back up, scoring a goal within a second. You know, that they're all running. It's a big running game, and yeah, as you said, it was a massive win for them.
Okay, the Cork WhatsApp group is aflame this morning, where they've clipped this, got the video going. Thanks very much. This is what. So,
motivation.
Yeah, well, certainly they will have done their homework anyway. After you forewarned is forearmed. That's the Sunday game. On Saturday, it's Dublin against Mayo as part of this doubleheader. Where are the Dubs this year? Because, in their cycle, you would feel like they should be at their most expressive at this point. They have the confidence, they have the experience. But actually, so far this year, they've looked a little bit off as well themselves.
Yeah, I think it was our quarter-final win over Donegal was really the telling point. Like, in the first 5-10 minutes, Donegal led by, I think it was 1-3 or 1-2 at that point. And yeah, you don't really normally see that. McBone wasn't happy after the game. He was like, it was a very sloppy performance. We just about got over the line. So there was a lot of things in there that you don't normally see Dublin doing. Just sort of not taking the right option. Taking it up the pitch and letting it off when it wasn't time. They weren't looking at the right time to let it in, and just you don't really see that with them. So yeah, there was a few little things like that. But look, I'd never write Dublin off. Like they have strength and depth in that panel. That's one thing they have. The likes of Hannah Tyrrell that's come in there this year, I just think her story is incredible. And I was actually looking back to see when the last time she played inter-county football, and it was actually, she was a goalkeeper for Dublin. Like, she's just a phenomenal athlete. Like, how she can go from being a goalkeeper, then obviously playing rugby with Ireland, and then just slots back into an inter-county setup. So she's been a major boost. Like, without her this year, I would actually love to see what sort of Dublin team we would have seen. She's just slotted in there. So yeah, there's a few questions over them. Obviously, Sinead McGoldrick as well, still coming back from injury. You have her to come in off the bench. Like, what a player to come in. But also at the same time, I suppose it shows the strength and depth of the panel that you don't know if she's there, but there's other girls that are slotting in there. So yeah, look, there's a few question marks over small things, but I wouldn't be writing them off too much now.
Okay, so you expect them to beat Mayo?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No harm to Mayo, but I just think Mayo this year, I thought they were a bit off. I didn't know where they were going. And then obviously against Galway, they won the game. Really impressive in defence. Up front against Sarah Rowe and Rachel Kearns, their movement together was brilliant. Hadn't seen that all year. Interchanging positions all the time. Really great to see. So Mayo, I just think they'll need to bring that intensity, pace, and a hell of a lot more to get over the Dubs, I'm afraid. I just think it's a big task.
Okay, one last thing I wanted to ask you about before we let you go. You covered most of the Ulster Football Championship for us here on Off the Ball. What is your instinct about the Tyrone-Kerry situation with with Tom Parsons on this morning saying that up to 50% of the Tyrone squad have had COVID?
Yeah, it's an All-Ireland semi-final. They don't come around too often for teams. Tyrone haven't seen them in a number of years. I just think if we can give them the extra time, I think Croke Park should, because the GA should. It's just, it's hard to see. Like, I actually seen from girls coming back into our squad, like, I know it's club, but I seen girls coming back in after having COVID and the effects that it can have. They came back to training and then we played a game, and just before half time, one of the girls was getting sick on the sideline, and then the other girl said she couldn't catch her breath, she had to come off. So you can really see the effects, and imagine going into an All-Ireland semi-final, the intensity of that. I just think they should be given time. Who wants to go out and see Kerry walk an All-Ireland semi? What's that going to do for them? I don't believe they would even like that. What would they benefit from it? So yeah, I do think if we can, they should be given the extra time. We all want to see a good game. We all want to see a good semi-final and set it up for the final. So yeah, I think an extra week wouldn't be any harm. All
right, Aisling Riley, thanks very much for joining us this morning, and best of luck with that prediction, because those dramatic predictions that we make on this show sometimes don't always come true, Ash.
Yeah, well, I'll see you next week, Ger. I'll give you an update then after they win.
Aisling Riley with us this morning here on OTB AM at 8:44. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. John Duggan is ready to go. John, good morning to you. How are you?
Good, Ger, and yourselves.
What's going on?
What's this constructive criticism thing?
Well, it's I guess it's our version of mean tweets.
So I've got a beauty for you. John Duggan talks shite with such confidence.
That's our job, John, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't know whether it was kind of a backhanded compliment or whatever. But that was quite a beauty that I got recently.
The last couple of days when I've been leaving work, there has been one of those giant trucks that there's like just a tank on the back of it and there are tubes coming out of it. You know what they're for, right? There's loads of businesses that the septic tank or the sewage tank doesn't actually work in these old buildings that we're in Dublin city centre. The slogan is "Suck with confidence." I was like, that's a motto for life.
It's a bit like one of those things you present without comment, and I don't think that any comment is actually necessary for that year.
Where are we going, JD?
Well, just in terms of the sports news, as this morning, we know that Chelsea won silverware in the Champions League final, and they've added to that. This is less important silverware. This is the Super Cup. The most probably eyebrow-raising thing was that loyalist band marching in front of the Chelsea fans down to Windsor Park last night. I thought the 12th was a month ago, but the 12th is actually today, the 12th of August. So they won it on penalties. Kepa came on, a bit like a Tim Krul job for Mendy at the end of extra time, and he saved 2 penalties in the shootout. 6-5 win on spot kicks over Villarreal ahead of the new Premier League season. 3 Irish clubs in action in Europe tonight. Bohemians against PAOK, 2-1 up from the first leg in Greece. No Bohemians fans allowed in. Rovers are in Albania to play at Ceuta at 7 o'clock, 1-0 up from the first leg. And then we have Dundalk 2-2 draw with Vitesse Arnhem last week. That match at Tata Stadium kicks off at 8. 300 grand on the line for each club if they can get through to the next phase. Celtic should be through to the next phase of the Europa League with a 4-2 lead over Jablonec going into that match at Parkhead. Cork are the Munster minor football champions, a clean sweep at underage level in hurling and football, 117-13 win over Limerick last night. And as things stand, there seems to be an appeal will be forthcoming from Limerick for Peter Casey to see if he can get that red card overturned that he received against Waterford. They played Cork in the senior decider on Saturday week. Golf-wise, Seamus Power and Padraig Harrington in the Wyndham Championship on the US Tour. On the European Tour, the London Golf Club hosting the Kazoo Classic with Niall Carney, Jonathan Caldwell, Cormac Sharvin and Paul Dunn in it. Leona Maguire and Stephanie Meadow in the Scottish Open, and then racing later, lads, is at Leopardstown and Tremor.
Right. And obviously the news this morning that up to 50% of the Tyrone players have been hit by COVID-19. The GPA CEO, Tom Parsons, was with us a little bit earlier on explaining this. John, 24 hours on, you were saying we should push it back. What's your instinct now about whether or not it will be pushed back, given that the official fixture list has been published?
Well, I don't know why they did that yesterday. Could they have waited? It seemed like a strange release to say, oh, this is on at 3 o'clock on Saturday week, and then the football final will be on 3 o'clock on the Saturday, which does not clash with the Azerbaijan game. My view is the same. You had All-Ireland finals in December of last year. They were able to move the football final this week to Saturday the 4th. I don't see why everybody cannot just take a deep breath about this and see what the lie of the land is with Tyrone next week. And then if they need to rearrange the games. This is the show. The All-Ireland Championship is what people are interested in. And we have to have a competition of integrity. I know what Tom Parsons said, that we don't know what the situation could be in a few weeks' time, but there are only 3 big games left in the calendar. Surely we should be able to hold them between now and the end of the year in a way that gives everybody the best possible chance. I'm sure club championships can work in tandem with that. And I don't see what the big deal would be to take a breath and then arrange fixtures in a different way if possible.
Okay, let's move on, because the Saturday show, back with a bang this weekend. The Premier League season is back. It is kind of slipped up a little bit unnoticed, given that the Olympics were on, wall-to-wall coverage, the Lions was on, and football was away for about 3 days, and then of course Lionel Messi exploded the internet. So let's talk about the Premier League and who are going to be champions, who are going to be top 4, who's going to be relegated, and what is your take on Spurs this season?
Well, I always look at it, and unfortunately, the way I've been wired for so many years, from a betting perspective. I'm looking at Chelsea at 5-1 to finish in the top 2. Their odds against, and I'm looking at City at odds on. So I'm going to go for Chelsea on the basis of Lukaku being the missing link in the puzzle. We know what Tuchel has done organisationally, got them defensively sound, won the Champions League, was a fantastic run. Like Jorginho was the top scorer in the Premier League last season. Lukaku banked in 24 goals for Inter Milan. He's a better player than he was when he left the club 8 years ago. And I think he's going to be a goal machine. And Chelsea, if Conte stays fit, have a big chance of challenging City for the title. But the way I see it, lads, I see the top 4 quite evenly matched in a way. I don't think there's much between the top 4, and then there's a big gulf to the rest. So the way I see it, the way I'm kind of calling it at the moment is Chelsea, City, United and Liverpool in that top 4 with a clear gap to the rest. I think Spurs will finish between maybe 5th and 7th. It's all about Kane, isn't it? Is Kane going to leave? We still don't know. It would seem by the signing of Romero, that excellent defender, talk about Martinez joining the club. Oliver Skipp is back from Norwich. I think Spurs will do okay, but it's all about Kane. Will he leave or will he not leave? What I do feel pretty strongly about is I don't think Southampton and Burnley are progressive teams. Southampton, the owner wants to sell the club. Danny Ings has left. Vestergaard could be going to Leicester. And Burnley, to me, the show's over. I think there are 2 clubs that are going to struggle. I know Norwich and Watford and Brentford coming up, there'll always be talk that they'll go straight back down. But I think Brentford have a bit about them. I think Southampton and Burnley of the teams that are established clubs are 2 clubs that could struggle.
Yeah, I've been predicting Burnley's demise for years, though. So I'm off that horse this time. Maybe finally they will go down and I'll end up regretting it. And then finally the sack race. Who's going to win that?
Well, once again, I think it's about Southampton and Burnley. So Hasenhüttl's 10-1, Dyche is 16-1. Well, Dyche should say, look, I've had enough. But like a club like Wolves, for example, Bruno Lage, if they start poorly, Arteta, like there's no excuses now, Eoin. No European football, no excuses. You got Ben White in there now. This is now or never for Arteta. But it's also now or never for Solskjaer. United, they got Varane, they got Sancho in there. Should United have invested in a striker? Will Cavani be playing every game? Should they have invested in a holding midfielder? These are the questions. And how will Liverpool play now they got all their defence back? Have Liverpool done enough in terms of investing in the attacking areas of the pitch? Because I know Salah, given his head, won't be turned because nobody's going to buy him. So maybe he'd be able to produce another 22 goals this season. But are Firmino and Mane the same as they were a couple of years ago? These are all the questions we're kind of asking ourselves. But I think Lukaku signing for Chelsea is going to be a big deal, and they can put it up to City. Yeah, I think the point about Kane is excellent, and I think the point about Salah and having nowhere to go is also excellent. So I would expect Salah to have a great season, and I think Harry Kane is going to be a Spurs player. That's my bold prediction for the start of the season. John, what time's the show? What time's everybody supposed to tune in on Saturday? Well, we're on the air at 1 o'clock. We're going to do a lot of Dublin-Mayo stuff, a Dublin-Mayo panel. We'll play some of the football pod. And then Dan McDonald, Johnny Ward back between 3 and 5. All the regulars this season, David Myler, Damien Delaney, Karen Duggan will be involved as well. Mark Lawrence. So we're looking forward to the football as always. And the good news for you, Jerry, is I think Villa will do well. I think Danny Ings and Buendia are good signings. They seem to have owners that are interested in the club. Yeah. I think Villa will do well. Villa are odds against to be in the top 10. I think that's a good bet. All right, good stuff. John Duggan, thanks a million. Tune in Saturday for more of that goodness from 1 o'clock to 5. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Okay, so Donegal coach, former Mayo boss Stephen Rochford joins us next here on OTB AM. I just want to play this clip first. Episode 14 of the Football Pod with Paddy and Andy is now available to listen to across all of the podcast platforms. If you have the OTB Sports app, though, you would have gotten 24 hours before everybody else. This week, as you would expect, it's a deep dive into Dublin against Mayo.
Andy, Andrew McKenna wants to know, obviously there's a lot of respect there, but which Dublin player did Mayo and Andy dread facing the most?
Well, there was plenty of the team dreaded facing the most. Like I mentioned Bernard last week. I got plenty of heat over that.
We're getting back into that.
But even Paul Flynn, James McCarthy, these guys, Brian Fenton, Paddy, like they were just, you had to give every one of those players respect. But me personally, I remember, I don't know which game it was. I think it could have been, I don't know which game it was, but I just remember being, for some reason, I found myself at right half forward. Jack McCaffrey, and I know that, like, the depth that Dublin go into, like, they know that I had no gas, like, and he screaming, he's like, give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball. And I was like, please don't give him the ball. All I could see was 80, 90 yards of space up in front of me.
What year is this?
I don't know, it must have been 15 or 16. Which year did he come back? I think it was 16.
15. He comes back 15. He wins
It didn't matter what year it was. Any year, he still had more pace than Andy. It doesn't matter.
I just say, and I was like, where's Kevin McLaughlin here and Jason Doherty when I need
Can I ask you a question? Is Jack McCaffrey saying that for his teammates to hear it, or is it in Croke Park where they actually can't hear it and he's only saying it for you to hear?
Oh, no, he noticed me. It's happened to me twice in my career. I can tell you the two players who did it. he did it to me once, and he knew it was me, and he knew he was away. It was like what I was saying last week about spotting maybe Michael Fitzsimon's going up the pitch, and then you try to get a wing back in marking you. Like if I got Jack Mack in under the goals, I'd be doing the same thing, you know. But Sean O'Shea did it to me in a league game down in Tralee. He spotted an 18, 19-year-old kid. I swear to God, he goes, "I'm on Andy Moore. I'm on Andy."
Jesus, I respect.
I look around and I see Hape's face behind me. I'm thinking, "Oh no, I'm in bother." But listen, I don't know I think Johnny Buckley could have been with them that year. So he was saying, if you get him out in the middle of the field, go, you know. And but they were the only two. There was the only two times it happened to me where I just had the fear of God. I was thinking, I'm dead here, you know.
And did he get done for pace, or did you ship him on to somebody else?
Straight away. I just literally. I just followed him straight away.
Black card. What about Jack? Did Jack get away from you?
Yeah. It was one of those holding him up so he doesn't fall over.
Very helpfully holding him up. Brilliant stuff there from the pod this week. It's getting loads of pop from anybody who listens to it, and that should be you as well. So you can get onto the OTB Sports app and have a listen to it there. Now, a reminder, OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Let's say good morning to Stephen Rochford. Stephen, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger. How are you?
Yeah, good. I'm excited about this, I have to say. This is one of those rare opportunities where we actually feel like somebody might be able to beat the Dubs. And I don't know, maybe we're wrong about that. What's your instinct, Stephen?
Well, I do think that, you know, each year over the last probably 5 or 6 years, you know, a Mayo Dublin game offers that glimmer of hope for all us mere mortals that are trying to beat Dublin over the best part of a decade. But I do think Mayo going into this year, I genuinely feel that they're nearly playing better than they were going into the All-Ireland final last year. I think that just the All-Ireland semi-final last year, I just felt that you know, whilst they ran up a big score against Tipperary, some of them were coughed up scores that you wouldn't typically get against, you know, a team of their peers. And I thought against Galway, whilst they may have gone through a little bit of a rocky part in the earlier part of the first half, I thought, you know, come half time, I felt that once they got their running game together, that would take care of it. And I do think that it's their pace that I don't think Dublin have come up against that this year. But you know, it is part of you know, sort of that glimmer of hope or something that sort of each and every team that comes up against Dublin are trying to find something that maybe they haven't been as accustomed to. But over the last number of years, they've always found an answer. But no, there is a quiet confidence. Certainly, there's nobody booking hotels or anything like that for September. But there's a confidence that the team are in a good place.
The only reason Mayo people aren't booking hotels is because the final could be pushed back again, Stephen, and they don't know the specific date. The idea that you bring up there is an interesting one. I guess it's been a rarity to have a really tough encounter regularly over the course of the last couple of years, given the fact that it's been a completely knockout championship. We've seen it with Dublin. They haven't got a proper test in Leinster this year. And maybe we were undervaluing just how important that Galway experience was for Mayo a few weeks back.
Yeah, well, I'd say in fairness to one that me would feel that they gave them a bit of a rattle, but at the same time, probably would think that Dublin, they never looked like losing the game. Yes, their margin of how much they were in the lead was pulled back, but you know, no, I get the part around Dublin seemed to be so uncontrolled, it seemed untested, but there's also part of that argument maybe to sort of say were Dublin always getting ready for August? Was that always their aim? They'd never say that publicly, but you know, have they been getting themselves ready to peak for a 2-week period in August, which potentially could be 3 weeks now, as we know. But in that, the Galway game and the manner in which Mayo went about that, I think was very positive. But I think that the foundations that Mayo laid in that game, you know, in relation to what they did both on their own kick out and what they did on the Galway kick-out, it will not be that easy against Dublin. Dublin will have, their own setups, their own plays off that to both, target Mayo kick-out, but also, wary that Mayo come with a good press on their own kick-out. So primary possession will be, as it always is, but it will be absolutely key. If Mayo don't really get a real handle around the middle of the field, both half-back line, half-forward line, and the two guys in the midfield, that's going to become a problem, because Mayo need to be able to mix up their game from a running and, a kicking game. They need to be able to do that, because an Aidan playing, in and out from the edge of the square will give them that kicking option. But it's what Tommy Conroy and Ryan O'Donoghue play their best football, and is some early ball. But you have to balance that with the Paddy Durkin, the Owen McLaughlin, the Oisin Mullen, the Lee Keegan, that Kevin McLaughlin, Matty Rua and Jim O'Connor. That athletic, strength that can come from deep. Getting that balance right, I think, is key to Mayo winning at the weekend.
On the kick-out, Stephen, it is maybe Meath was a real test, as you mentioned there, in fairness, that there was a good quarter of that game, at least, where Dublin were under a bit of pressure. But the fact really is that Eoin Comerford hasn't been in a big All-Ireland Championship game from start to finish where he's really under the pump. So do you think Mayo will go extra hard on him? Do you think that the press would have existed anyway? Or how do you see him, how do you see Mayo perhaps getting into his head, or how do they try and get into his head?
I think I do think that what you've said is fair enough in relation to a crowd and a pressure situation with something on the line. But be under no doubt that Eoin Comerford has served a great apprenticeship, be it in practice games in Dublin and over league games and a couple of championship games that he's played now. He's come up against formations in their practice that they'll have been replicating to what Mayo would have done, or what Kerry would have done, or a Donegal or a Tyrone over the last number of years. And he was the guy that was the opposition keeper for that. So, as regards what the formation element will be, I don't think there'll be any major surprises in that, unless there's something out of a rabbit out of the hat situation. But yes, of course, the pressure situation. If Mayo can keep the heat on Dublin, get them into a negative position, maybe Mayo ahead going into the final stretch. Yes, obviously that we're going to see the true credentials of Eoin Comerford dealing with that level of pressure. But as regards his skill and his ability, I don't see Eoin Comerford there as being any weakness to Dublin. He's a guy that's really impressed me through club, college, and any of his opportunities in inter-county. So it's not a weakness, but yes, we haven't seen him in that cauldron. And maybe 24,000 there isn't quite the cauldron that we like to put him under pressure with 82, but it is what it is.
Stephen, the Connacht Telegraph reported last night that there are unconfirmed reports about doubts around Oisin Mullen's fitness. You know more than anybody, the rumour mill on the week of a big game just takes fire, and all of a sudden Jim McGuinness is in the changing room giving speeches at half time for you guys. So is this just the madness that goes around it? Is there always a little bit of truth in some of these, or what's that actually like to live through?
Yeah, it's I think, as much as possible, the players will have closed that off. I know in the run into big games that we would have had down to the years, guys would have turned off certain apps off their phone, deleted them off. They would be under good instruction to really manage their social circle, and certainly in a COVID environment, you're probably hopeful that the lads aren't engaging with sort of the outside influences. That what I mean in that, like, it's just even neighbours and friends and stuff, even maybe going for a coffee or any of that. So, hopefully the rumour doesn't play out. But it is something that can become a distraction as well. And certainly with a couple of days out, that's going to heat up a bit. It was around the county a bit yesterday. But we'll know a lot more, I think, when we open up the programme on Saturday morning and see whether Oisín is listed in the 26, and hopefully he is.
And that's the thing, since we mentioned it earlier on, we've had counter rumours suggesting that everything's grand, don't worry about it. So it's rumour and counter rumour, literally, probably until the squad is named, and if he's in the squad, hopefully he starts and he's fit and raring to go, because he has become a key player already.
Absolutely. I mean, the first thing that I sort of noticed in Oisín this year is, COVID has served him well from a point of view of, in the space of even, last December in the All-Ireland final to the specimen that he has turned into now. It's really, really impressive, and credit to him and nutrition and the S&C guys that have obviously worked on him, and that has only added to his natural power and pace, that strength element now. And I think that's, there would have been a feeling that his more natural position was that more advanced role of the half-back line. That's where he would have played his underage football, and that real strike running ability that he has is a key strength, but it's a major tool for Mayo as they go into this battle. I think with himself and Paddy Durcan and probably an Eoin McLaughlin, that will give Dublin undoubtedly, and as I said at the top of the piece, they've dealt with a lot that has come at them. But I'm struggling to think over the last few years, have they come up against that level of pace and power? And you do have to have a plan for it. And it's something that Mayo, I think, last weekend when James and the management team would have been sitting down to sort of say, right, where are we going to give Dublin trouble? The half-back line was certainly an area which they felt that Dublin were going to have their homework really well done.
Stephen, there seems to be a general school of thought that the peak of Dublin came around 16-17 direction when you came up against them. Where do you think this Dublin team is in comparison to that Dublin team?
Yeah, so I think, in fairness, the teams evolved. Like, the Mayo team of 2017, I think I was counting last night that there might only be four guys that started the All-Ireland final in 17, and maybe likely to start at the weekend. Now, obviously, Killian being injured, and then there were a couple of guys, the Conor Loftuses and Diarmuid O'Connors and the Stephen Cohens that could all start at the weekend that played as subs. But, Dublin have evolved because they continue to produce quality players, but as they probably look into this weekend and who's going to start for them, you're probably looking at maybe a Paddy Small, a Niall Scully, who played I think every game in 2017 started, should I say, every game by the All-Ireland final, and maybe Sean McMahon. Their team is still quite solid, and in that I understand that people are sort of saying in relation to Dublin that maybe they're on the decline. I would be far away from that position. I think as that team has matured and has sort of got to understand what's coming up against them, they're just controlling the game, and that isn't what I suppose the neutral supporters or people they're looking at the game want to see. They want to see tackles and the ball breaking and that. But that's not up to Dublin to instigate that. They're looking about, and certainly in a championship that is a knockout, 1 point wins are fine. You don't need to be winning games by 10, 11, 12 points. You can't bring any of that margin into the next game. And I do think Dublin, their team looks as strong to me as it did 3 or 4 years ago. And yes, probably the argument that people can make is that their bench doesn't look as strong, as maybe when Bernard and Kevin McManaman and Jim McConnelly were coming off of Paul Flynn. But that's because those guys had accumulated a couple of All-Irelands. But come this weekend, you could see Sean Bugler on the bench who started last year's All-Ireland. You may see a Cormac Costa or a Paddy Small. One of them, I think, could end up on the bench. Cullen Basquel, who's played in a couple of All-Irelands. Obviously, and then you start to build out 3 or 4. Philly McMahon is still there. So there's still a lot of quality and experience in that Dublin squad. And, if they win this weekend, that's another bunch of young guys on the bench that are starting to pick up all Ireland's and build an experience. So I think, in fairness, I don't see them on a decline, to be perfectly honest. I just probably see them having evolved further in relation to just controlling the game and really looking to suck out the oxygen of opposition or what they bring to them.
Well, the obvious answer to this question would be the age profile, Stephen, because I was just going to ask, why have they made that evolution? Yeah, well,
I think that it probably started out of, the 2014 defeat to Donegal, and whilst Dublin and the Dublin-Mayo game, we used to reference it sometimes, in a frustrating way, as it was like a game of tennis. It's sort of up and down, and you could at times you could get a bit of whiplash looking at it from left to right. And Dublin always had that way about them. But I think after 2014, when that sort of that blanket and Tyrone obviously were fastening that down, and it came to 2017, and they looked to really have mastered in that 2017 game that field sports have evolved now to a sort of control and a possession type game, and if you're in possession, it means you're not having to defend. It means that you're not under pressure, and the stats that sort of run in your favour to control games and win them. When you're in possession, you control all of them. So I think it's been a natural thing for that to happen. And you're seeing other teams, when they're now in possession, controlling it and getting those percentage shots off. I think if you were to look at some of the heat maps with Dublin around their shots, they typically don't score from the wings. They're very patient. They penetrate through the middle. They probably score a little bit on the wings, really, from their frees, but they just work the percentages time and time again. And there's probably a bit of the basketball influence on that, but it shows, I think, as well, just how smart they are and how cohesive as a forward unit that they can be. And even last year, when we were looking at and people sort of saying now, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. Last year I felt that the performances was about that death by 1,000 cuts. Probably take the Meath Leinster final out of it, but through Cavan, through Mayo, they just tap the ball over the bar. When the goal opportunity comes, they're usually just hammering it into the back of the net, because they don't score goals of the season. They don't score the Daniel Flynn goal, because they're just based on their process. And I know people don't like to hear that, and it becomes a little bit boring. But when you're working on team cohesion, you have to stick to that.
Myself and Tommy Rooney have a bet about who is actually going to end up on the bench. Which of those forwards would you like, if you were in Desi's shoes, would you like to be looking at the bench and going with 15 minutes left to go, this game's in the melting pot, I want to bring them in? Is it pace in Paddy Small? Is it the anger of Cormac Costello? Is it the experience and the game management of Dean Rock?
No, I think Dean Rock starts for you. I think he's your go-to free taker. So for me, Dean Rock starts, and I think I think Paddy Small starts insofar as he gives you that balance with that left-footed kicker, brings another bit of pace to that inside forward line. And I think and it's look, you can use the word it's unfair. It's more unfortunate, I think, because when you're picking, when you only have to pick 15, I think fair and unfair don't come into it. You pick what you feel is your strongest team and your strongest options. And Cormac Costello, I think, is familiar to that role. He won't like that being said, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but I mean it from the point of view of his experience, being able to know what's expected coming off the bench, how to create frees, create simple scoring chances, and I think in the overall that cohesion element, I think they will look to push Brian Howard forward as a bit of an option of being able to, I suppose, challenge the Mayo half back line to defend, but also using his pace and athleticism to be able to curb that forward running. And while Paddy Small has played out there a little bit, I don't think it's his natural instinct or strength to be a defensive half forward. And I think Brian Howard and Niall Scully have that more in their natural game.
Everything you're saying here today, Stephen, is kind of giving me the sense that there is a bang of Kerry 2009 off this Dublin team, that there is a massive performance coming in a really big game, and it could be this weekend.
Yeah, I do have that worry that there is a big performance coming. I just sort of have had this sense through the league that Dublin were building towards, getting right for August. Now, we could be as far out as a lighthouse. We don't really know, but that's what they were getting towards. And they have all their team. As well, look, I know Kevin McMahon and Philly McMahon. There may be, what's their preparation been like? But I mean, as regards who you would see being their starting team, John Small, Owen Merchant back, having game time under them in the Leinster final. They're back to having options, and that is a little bit of a worry and coming to peak. And I think, as you said, probably, Kerry came totally in under the radar. They're not as much Dublin, but their form hasn't been of a trend line to sort of say, wow, that's a worry, because they have just so much quality, experience, and big game players.
All right, Stephen, enjoy the game, whatever happens. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thanks, lads.
Brilliant analysis there from Stephen Rochford. If you want to get in touch about that, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Or, of course, you can leave a comment on the YouTube channel. We'd love to hear from you this morning, whatever's going on. 16 minutes past 9 if you want to get in touch with us. We are going to tell you what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio now. So between now and 7 o'clock, when Off the Ball is on, Barry Ryan, his book about Irish cycling, The Ascent. We've got our History of Sport lecture series from Paul Rouse at 3. Our retro panel is Dealing with Disappointment, and OTB Gold this evening at 6 is Sonia O'Sullivan. Right. What do you think, Eoin? What are you leaning towards here? The Dublin big performance? That
it's starting to creep into my mind. As soon as I moved them off to number 1 in the power rankings, I started to get inside my own head here a little bit, and it would, and it's not. This is not the first time it's been said. Like, it was definitely interesting. I think Eamon Fitzmaurice on the Examiner podcast after the Kerry Cork game was talking and telling that story that we now know of the Kerry team cheering on the train when they found out that they'd drawn Dublin in the 09 quarter-final, and he felt that Dublin would be delighted to have a big opponent, a la Mayo, to maybe shake a few cobwebs off against. And I'm starting to lean towards that a little bit this weekend. Even though we have all known form this season suggests that we're in for another 2016/2017 type classic, I wonder if what we're actually going to see is going to be closer to the 2019 matchup between the two sides. Like, I do think that one of the dark horses in all these conversations is James Horan, and sure, he is one of the most famous men in GEA, but there is a different edge to James Horan since he's come back. I don't think a manager goes back unless they have designs on big plans and big ambitions, and that is to win in All-Ireland. And I'm sure that I'm sure he has something planned, and I'm sure that he has real belief in what his team can do this weekend. So there are definitely conflicting emotions here, which is a really good way to be thinking about any game, because we've been denied that quite a bit over the last few years.
Exactly. There was an uncertainty of outcome about a match involving the Dubs for the first time in I don't know how long. So I would even have said the Ireland final against Kerry, it felt like they were going to win that until about a minute into injury time, and felt like, they're still going to get a draw out of this, and they did. Right, let's move on. It's time for us to talk about your TV picks for the weekend. So obviously you're going to be watching it's a lot of football, and there's the All-Ireland football semi-final, and there's lots of other good sport on. But apart from that, Sue Murphy, good morning to you. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Very good. What are we watching?
I suppose actually this one's Monday, so you will get away with it until Monday, so you can watch all your football. And I think both of you will really, really like this show. It's called The White Lotus. I don't know if you've heard anything about it yet. It's a HBO show that was released in July. There's 6 episodes, and it's based on a lot of rich people. Horrible rich people. They seem to do very well, but horrible rich people go to a resort in Hawaii, and they're kind of like living these perfect lives in this beautiful resort with these really nice staff, and everything's going really nice. And then you kind of scratch the surface a little bit and realise they're despicable people that have done despicable things. And it's very Like the first episode, the setup is in the first 5 minutes, you're in. They give away something and then they take it away from you straight away, and then they go, oh, 1 week earlier, and you're like, oh, now I'm gonna have to watch the entire series. But what I think HBO and those kind of dramas that they commission, what they do really well is the character development. So you get to know these characters really, really well. The scripts are really good. The location looks amazing. But it's very funny. You're kind of laughing when you feel like you shouldn't be. It's real, like really, really dark humour. Like there was a joke about a baby dying at one stage and I laughed and I went, why did I just laugh at that? That's horrendous. Like it's really, really dark comedy.
Is it a Succession rip-off?
Exactly what it sounds like.
You know, is it like a cash-in, accompaniment piece? Like, oh, look, this thing here works. Get the algorithm to belch out something similar.
I felt that way because I was like, here I am watching a lot of people I don't like yet again. But I don't know. It's kind of, here's what Succession would do in their downtime in Hawaii when they're trying to manipulate hotel staff. I don't know. That's what it kind of felt like. But Jennifer Coolidge is one of the main characters in it. And she's clearly on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Her mother has passed away. She brings the ashes with her. She can't find the plastic bag where the ashes were in. And she's just looking for a massage for the first 2 episodes. She's just absolutely, she's Stifler's mom. She's just absolutely hilarious in it. And I feel like she's just come into these amazing roles in the last couple of years and she's doing really, really well. Connie Britton is in it and she plays this like really like big CEO who's doing way better than her husband, and her husband is a bit jealous about it. But the characters are just, honestly, I think you'll just really, really like it. And I don't want to give away too much about it because there is a kind of a mystery going on in the background. But if you get into this, I'm on the, like, I went straight on to the second episode and I can't wait to watch the rest of it. It's just really, really good drama.
Connie Britton from Friday Night Lights.
Friday Night Lights, yeah.
Yes, your favourite.
You buried the lead there as well. Ned Schneebly is the creator, writer and director of the whole thing.
Who's this?
Yeah, Mike White.
Mike White, you're obviously not a School of Rock fan, Ger.
Not really.
No, okay.
So School of Rock is great.
Bring people with you here, folks.
I just haven't, Mike White's career, who plays Ned Schneebly, and who, of course, did he write School of Rock as well?
Both School of Rock, yeah.
He's had an interesting enough career. I think that was personally, I think like his peak. He was previously writer on Dawson's Creek, I think, wasn't he? Way back in the 90s.
See, if you just said that, I would have been in.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I need to know my audience here a little bit. Think less 2003 and more 1997, and you'll bring Ger Gilroy along with you.
He's so varied, though. Like, if you took these two pieces and said, like, if you said School of Rock beside White Lotus and said they're the same writer, you'd be like, what? They're nowhere near each other. He's very, very, like, he's really talented. But I think you guys are going to love it. I think you'll really get into it if you watch it. Really, really good.
Okay. So that is White Lotus, and it's on Sky and now from Monday. Yeah. Modern Love on Prime from Friday.
Yeah, I think you're probably sick to death of me talking about the podcast Modern Love. It's the New York Times podcast that was based on the columns. So it's people's true love stories. And this is the second series of this, so it'll be released on Prime tomorrow. All the episodes are released. It's 8 episodes, but there were 8 episodes in the first season as well. And they're standalone episodes. They're just a snapshot of a love story. And honestly, they're just really good. And I don't know if you've watched this yet, but people that I thought wouldn't be into this at all, because I was like, that's probably a little bit sappy for you, love it. Like, it's just, I think the idea that these are true love stories, and they've just kind of manipulated them a little bit for the screen, but mostly they stick to the letters that have been sent into that column, is really, really nice. Like, the podcast is brilliant. It takes a celebrity, gets them to read the letter that was sent into the New York Times, and then brings the person who wrote the letter into the studio and talks to them about what had happened since they wrote the letter. It's one of the best podcasts out there. It's only 15-20 minutes. It's really, really good. This whole thing is hooked around that, and the cast for this is really good as well. Anna Paquin's in it, Minnie Driver, Garrett Hedlund, Kit Harington is in one of the episodes.
Okay.
So they're short, they're a little bit sappy, but I really haven't come across somebody who doesn't like it if they're watching it, if you know what I mean.
Okay, we've actually run foul of time here, so we've got literally 2 minutes left. What do you want to talk about? The Derry City doc, Good Vibrations, or Love Island?
25,000 complaints at Love Island from last Friday, and Faye was a disgrace. That's Love Island covered.
I saw that episode. You were giving out about the men all month, and then it's a woman who gets all the...
And then the women let me down. No, she was a disgrace. It was really bad. But the Derry City doc, it'll be on the Player. It was on last night on RT. It's just I don't think there's something that people don't know about Derry City from that, but it's a lovely, lovely documentary on why Derry City is so important to that city. It's lovely. Really, really nice.
Yeah, the BBC a couple of months ago, was it? it?
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant, and really worth your time. And then Good Vibrations, what's that?
It's a film that's set in the 1970s. It kind of reminded me in some ways of the Derry City one, because it's all about like the positive influences around Northern Ireland, like things like music, sport and things like that get forgotten during the Troubles. So it's set in the 1970s. Richard Dormer plays Terry Hooley, who set up a record shop and started just signing these bands and was convinced he was going to put Belfast on the map as the main music scene in Europe. And it's heartfelt, it's lovely. He is so invested in these guys, and religion just doesn't matter.
Is it a documentary?
To them. No, it's a film. It's a film. Right. Richard Dormer plays him. It's just, if you haven't seen it, it was honestly one of my favourite films from a few years ago, but it really reminded me of the Derry City thing, that some of these things just transcend politics and religion and everything, and music was definitely one of those things.
And where do you get it?
It's wonderful. You could, if you search for it, it's available online, but you'd have to rent it on YouTube and those kind of things. But I just said I'd bring it in this evening because it's just very similar. It's really, really good.
Sue, good stuff. Thanks very much for that. We will obviously clip that, and if you missed it, you'll be able to check it out on all of our social channels, and we'll have more from Sue next Thursday morning as well. And obviously still talking about the Sopranos. We might get into that a bit more next week. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, with your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We're going to bring you Joe's interview with Billy Walsh before 10 o'clock, but we're back straight after this with Leinster and Ireland rugby stars Ross and Harry Byrne in conversation with Eoin.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Joey Boy, don't be tempting fate with me here. I was bricking it.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Rugby podcast? If not, here's some of what you've missed in the last week.
The way that officials and officiating is dealt with by the coaches. And I think that these two teams have let down World Rugby. There's no doubt about that.
Subscribe now to the OTB Rugby podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, or get the entire OTB catalogue on the OTB Sports app.
Car insurance is boring, but you don't have to be. Get Set Go is the kind of car insurance you can sort in a few minutes online, then bounce on with your day. Are you ready for Quick Start Insurance? Get a quote now at getsetgo.ie. MCL Insurance Services Ireland Limited, trading as getsetgo.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Spearheaded by Leinster rugby players, brothers and competitors Harry and Ross Byrne, who are taking teams on a virtual run from the 2nd to the 16th of August. We have the Dublin-Simon Run at Home. It's going from Dublin to Rome, covering the host cities of the Six Nations Championship. On registration, participants will automatically be assigned to Team Ross or Team Harry, with Ross and Harry acting as team captains. Each team will work towards the collective goals of running from the Aviva to the Stadio Olimpico in Rome and back, covering the stadiums of the Six Nations, with the team that has clocked up the most kilometres by August 16th winning the race. Runners and walkers of all ages and abilities are invited to take part, and you can register now and clock your miles for Dublin-Simon's Run at Home with Team Harry and Team Ross. And if you don't have time to run, you can buy some kilometres for your favourite team in the Dublin-Simon Run at Home, and you can visit dubsimon.ie/run at home, and it is in association with Deutsche Bank as well. Ross, you were trailing this time last week. Have you managed to arrest the decline in your sporting prowess?
Thankfully, we've taken the lead now, which is brilliant coming into the final stretch. So it's great to have one up on Harry, but more importantly, people have been very generous with the donations. I think particularly with the bad weather, I don't think people have been able to get out as much. But thankfully, people have been brilliant and they've been donating, which is absolutely incredible. As we've raised almost €31,000 now, so it's fantastic.
There does seem to be a greater sense of maybe generosity amongst the Irish community over the last little while, where we start to realise what's kind of more important than other things in our lives.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's probably one thing with COVID. People don't take things for granted as much anymore, maybe. But I think the support that the Dublin-Simon community got over the last 10 days or so has been absolutely incredible. Even last week, the difference between this week and last week is phenomenal, and people have been incredibly generous with their donations. So the Dublin-Simon community, it's absolutely incredible for them, and hopefully the money will go a long way to helping people.
Ross, Harry, how have you dealt with this latest setback to your attempt to win this?
Yeah, I suppose I just have to look at the positives. No. More importantly, it's brilliant. Maybe I can lace my shoes up and get out and run a bit. No, it's brilliant, to be honest. The amount we've raised so far is brilliant, and still have 5 days left to go to try reach our fundraising target of 50,000 would be absolutely amazing. If we can get as close to that or even over it would be brilliant, but people have been amazing so far. In terms of the competition, yeah, not taking it very well, but there's still time.
So make sure to get on to dubsimon.ie/run at home, as I've said, because as the lads said, they're close to that incredible target of raising 50,000, and it would be brilliant. You've been so generous already, so keep donating, and it is still going on for the next little while, and there is still time to turn the tide on this Harry versus Ross thing that we've got going on here. Lads, just to wrap up on the Lions tour, we've been chatting to you about this over the last couple of weeks. Really interested in your take on the third and final test, actually. Ross, we might start with you. What was your big takeaway from the defeat for the Lions?
Yeah, it was certainly probably a slightly different game to the previous ones. Obviously, I think the early introduction of Finn Russell, probably obviously unintentionally, unfortunately Dan Biggar got injured, but it definitely changed the way the Lions played. And it was interesting to see. It would have been interesting to see, I suppose, maybe if they played a little bit more like that in the first two tests. Obviously, it's very easy to say that now in hindsight, but I think it probably shows how good South Africa really are. To be honest, in terms of, I think sometimes people have probably not that they forget they're the World Cup champ. They're so clinical. It's incredible. Even the way they play, they just kind of wait for one or two chances and they just take them. And unfortunately, the Lions had one or two chances and they just didn't take them. And at the highest level, you have to be clinical. So it was. I think it's just incredible, really, how good South Africa are.
I think you're dead right. I think there's been a lot of underappreciation for South Africa over the last little while as a rugby team, and maybe just not playing any test rugby for so long, just out of sight, out of mind almost, might have been the situation. Harry, what was your take on Finn Russell's performance? Because, Jesus, he really brought a spark to that tour in the 70-odd minutes that he had on the pitch.
Yeah, he completely left the shackles off, didn't he? And he just kind of went for it, I suppose. As a spectator, it was definitely a lot more exciting to watch. I think interesting take on as well how you can go against teams who defend like South Africa defend, the way they kind of play such a kind of hard rush defence, coming out hard on the outside. But I think a lot of people take a seat back sometimes from it. But if you actually go at it, you can see you can do a bit of damage to their defensive system. And obviously, it was arguably there for the Lions to win. There's just a few important opportunities that they just missed, really. But yeah, no, it's definitely as a spectator and watching it, it's definitely a lot more exciting to watch.
Ross, do you want to take on that point that Harry made there about coming up against a defence like South Africa? Is it bravery? Is that the most important thing that you require in those sort of moments, taking the ball to the line?
Yeah, I think it's you definitely have to be brave the way they went about it. And I don't even know if it's taking the ball to the line. I think it could have been Finn Russell's first or second touch. He actually did a kick pass. I don't even know if it was initially it just kind of happened, and yeah. I don't know if he even thought it was going to happen. But I think instantly, just when he did something like that, it probably just changes the mind of even the South African winger straight away that there's a different option here. And he kind of kicked a few times into space quite well, and then he was taking the ball to the line. And he got smashed a few times, but it just keeps the South African defence guessing, and it's not easy to do. It's brave, and he really backs his skills. And it was impressive, but it's probably the way to go about it. But again, it's very easy to say here because you'd say the Lions were very unlucky in the last test how they played. But as Harry said, it is, I suppose, it's more entertaining to watch. But ultimately, it's what the result is the most important thing.
How much balls did it take on the other side of things then for someone like Morné Steyn to come on 12 years later and do the exact same thing that he did in 2009? To come into that scenario and have that much importance bestowed on you immediately without having kicked the ball in the test, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's when you kind of saw his name in the 23, you're kind of thinking, is it written in the stars for him here? It was funny because me and Harry were actually watching one of I think it was the second test of the 09 game a couple of weeks ago. And we were when we saw him, we couldn't believe that he's there again. It is absolutely remarkable. To go where he wasn't even really playing for Stade Francais over the last couple of years. And then to come on and do what he did just shows how much quality he has. And he is an absolute world-class goal kicker, and he's probably one of the best there's ever been.
What stood out to you from the 2009 game watching it back, Harry? Was that the first time you watched it? Watched it back, I should say?
No, we actually watched it back a few times over lockdown. Right. I suppose everyone talks about it as the most physical game they've seen, but in terms of just pure entertainment as well, it's fantastic. I suppose also the major difference, you look at it a bit, I know it's going back to a COVID thing, but like just the fans and the atmosphere you could tell from that game, just kind of, there was real kind of a bite to it. Like, and there's definitely a bite to this game, but you definitely see the difference that a full stadium makes to a game. And just when the stakes are that high, I suppose that's when sport's at its best. And for Mornay Stain to kick that goal again, and she's incredibly impressive. And he could have retired 5 years ago and still had an absolutely incredible career. Never played the Springboks again. You'd say he's one of the best ever, but to come back at 37 years of age and to do that is phenomenal.
Ross, do you think that there's a kind of maybe more of a respect for players like Finn Russell in terms of what they can provide at 10 over the last couple of years? Because it does seem that it seems that as a head coach, you've almost got two different avenues to take, either the traditional goal-kicking number 10 or the 10 that can actually be a bit of a playmaker for the team. Do you find that there is kind of like a bit of a dichotomy in what we're seeing and in what coaches are going for at the moment?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like, it's definitely probably the way the number 10 position has probably gone a little bit in the last couple of seasons, even with, if you look at maybe Richie Mwanga and Tomac, kind of how they play the game, there is players who are doing it. But again, I think if you're probably going to have a player like that, it's the other players around them, how important they are. So if you look at France, for example, how much work Dupont probably does in terms of the organisation, managing the team, and for Mwanga, for New Zealand as well, the operators he has in and around them. So it definitely is a fine balance, I suppose. But again, it's, as you say, it's up to the coach's perspective in terms of what way they want to go about playing. I think that's probably what makes rugby great in terms of some teams will go and play that way and some teams will go, absolutely not. I want to be a bit more structured and to a plan, as opposed to Finn Russell's a bit of a maverick. You don't really, maybe he doesn't know what he's going to do, but I mean, when it comes off, it's amazing, but there's plenty of times when it doesn't come off and you're kind of tearing your hair out probably a little bit as well. So it's I don't know which way I'd be leaning. It's a tough one to weigh up, but I'd probably be a little bit more on the measured approach, but it's what makes it so good.
Absolutely. A player can wear the same jersey and look at a game totally differently. Just one other thing I wanted to actually pick your brains on. You were mentioning there the idea of playing against that aggressive South African line. The 50-22 rule is probably something that you boys are going to see up close and personal over the next little while. Is that something you're excited for, Ross? Is that something that's going to benefit you?
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. We've actually, even in training the last few weeks, everyone's kind of going mad looking for it the whole time. It'll be interesting to see how teams kind of go about it at the start of the season. But you'd imagine, it's going to open up even the front line a little bit more because teams are going to have to respect it. I don't know if it's going to be as prominent as people think, but because it is probably slightly harder to do. But it's definitely something I'm looking forward to, and it creates a great opportunity. I suppose it rewards a very impressive skill of a great kick.
Harry, would you go along with that?
Yeah, 100% agree. I think, it's been a lost art a bit of people. You used to see back in the day where people would be spiraling balls into the corner and having a lot more excitement and probably not getting the reward that they deserve for that skill. And I think it's going to open up for the attack. I think it's going to make the game a lot more exciting because defences are going to have to be so much more concerned about the backfield, which hopefully will drop a few players out of the front line, which then adds other options. So you might even see people probably play more with ball in hand with it. Like, you don't know how it's going to go. It'll be interesting to see when it settles down. Obviously, the first while it'll probably be kicking mad for a little bit, but I think it'll definitely be good for the game. Yeah, 100%.
Just go for it, Ross.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I think in the New Zealand game at the weekend, against Australia, I'm not sure if there was one, even 50-20. Like, they weren't even really going for it. Particularly off set piece. Like, New Zealand had a few scrums in their own half, and you think it's a great opportunity to really go for it. But they actually opted to run the ball nearly every time. So I think as Harry said, it could actually have the opposite effect in terms of teams will be holding players maybe back off set piece, and it'll potentially open up the front line more. So it will be interesting to see what teams, I suppose, how they go about it. But it's definitely exciting, and as Harry said, hopefully make the game a bit more entertaining.
I think just from the fact that I think anything that favours the attack like that, new rule changes are definitely going to be more exciting for people to watch, and hopefully bring more people watching it, and definitely hopefully get out of a bit more for spectators anyway. It's tough to see kind of arm wrestle games, I can imagine, and low scoring games. So I hope that this definitely has a good effect on that front.
Absolutely, because there's so much opportunity with things like this to take the spectacle of rugby to a whole new level, because that is, in fairness, one of the things that has come up, unfortunately, on the back of the Lions tour about the spectacle that was. Now, personally, I think that everybody should have the option and play whatever way you want. But if we try and actually tilt it in favour of the attacker, as you say, Harry, I think that's what we want to see, Ross. At least stack the deck a little bit more in favour of the creative players.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think South Africa, for example, gets so much criticism in terms of how they play, but it's like you have to just respect it. It's a bit like in football how Jose Mourinho over the years, people would criticise, but he won multiple trophies, and it's up to the other teams to come up with a different way of playing to beat it. And then if another team becomes world champions playing, say, a more positive way, then that's how the game will go. So I don't think you can really give out about it, because it's up for everyone else to find a different way of beating them. But that's why I think, I mean, everyone probably wants a team to be the best that are playing the most entertaining way, because that's what everyone wants to see, particularly for someone who maybe is just getting into rugby or wouldn't have a great understanding of the game. You want to see a bit more free-flowing than, I suppose, the arm wrestles, as Harry was describing.
Yeah, it's always good to have a villain as well, I find. And everything that's been said about South Africa has been said since I can remember, really. I don't remember ever a conversation around South Africa not being like this. So it's just the way it is. It's a rugby culture, and I think it's not a bad thing. Just to wrap up then on the Dublin-Simon run at home. So we are talking about, this is going all the way till the 16th of August. It's probably worth stating as well, Ross, here, just about the importance of the charity over the next couple of months in particular, especially once winter starts to set in and once there's a greater demand, I guess, on Dublin-Simon services.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why it's so great to raise the money at the moment, particularly when winter comes and the weather changes, although the weather's changed a little bit already, but the money will go directly towards 7,500 people and families that are either directly affected by homelessness or at the risk of it, which is obviously a big one, because there's a lot of people out there who are struggling. So it's great to hopefully raise a little bit more money as well, because it goes such a long way to either preventing families becoming homeless or else people who already are homeless at the moment, hopefully getting them out of that situation.
Absolutely. Well, just a reminder then that it is spearheaded by Leinster rugby players, brothers and competitors Harry and Ross Byrne, and they're taking teams on a virtual run from the 2nd to the 16th of August, so still plenty of time to sign up. It's from Dublin to Rome, and it is covering the host cities of the Six Nations Championship. On registration, participants will automatically be assigned to Team Ross or Team Harry, with Ross and Harry acting as team captains, and each team will work towards the collective goals of running from Via Viva to the Stadio Olimpico in Rome and back, covering the host cities of the Six Nations. And the team that has clocked up the most kilometres by August 16th will win the race. Runners and walkers of all ages and abilities are invited to take part, and you can register now to clock your miles for Dublin-Simon's run at home with Team Harry and Team Ross. And if you don't have time to run, you can buy some kilometres for your favourite team in the Dublin-Simon run at home. Visit dubsimon.ie/run at home for more details and for registration and donations. Ross, Harry, it's been great speaking to you over the last couple of weeks. Very best of luck now with the last few days of this initiative.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. It's great to be on.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
I'm very happy to welcome Team USA boxing head coach Billy Walsh is with us. Hey, Billy, you're very welcome.
Good afternoon or good evening. It's great to be here.
Where in the world are you these days?
I'm in the sunny southeast of Wexford, called Wexford.
Oh, good. Home?
Got home, yeah, 2 nights ago.
Great. And do you have to self-isolate now? Are you good, or what's the rules? What are you doing at home?
So I've been vaccinated for a while, so I'm good to go.
Okay, good. So, listen, great to chat to you and to reflect on, I'm sure, a very intense couple of weeks. Just curious, first of all, so when you're the head boxing coach with Ireland, everybody's very focused on how Ireland are doing, and there's lots of questions afterwards and lots of interviews. With Team USA, we're talking about a country who topped the medal table, 113 medals all told, 30 of them being gold. So, like, I don't suspect the New York Times are on your case in a huge way, or are the media onto you and talking about your performance or otherwise? What's it like being that smaller fish in the much, much, much bigger bowl?
Yeah, it's a different dynamic. I think everybody in Ireland would know how the boxing team does, and not so much in the States. I think there's been some rumblings, I suppose, because of the fact that the United States now are producing and winning medals again. I think it's the best most medals that we've won since 1996 in boxing. So that probably had a bit of media attention around it. But other than that, no, very, very little. Just family and friends and back home here in Wexford and in Ireland that are interested in how we're doing. That's really it.
So tell us about the experience out there. This must have been a very, very different games to anything you've experienced before. Intense with the COVID situation, or did you get used to it? Was it enjoyable? Could you move freely? Could you not move freely? What was the almost schedule like for you out there?
Yeah, look, it was absolutely a different games. The COVID games. It's my 6th Olympic Games, and without doubt, probably the strangest one. But it was we had done a lot of preparation as regards our own camps and stuff that we had to have within the States, and even traveling out of the States, and COVID protocols, so that when we got to the games, that anything that they had prepared wasn't going to ruffle our feathers or put us in a bad way. But once we got into the village and once we had been tested and cleared, we were tested every day. It was pretty insane because we had already been following a lot of the same protocols back in our own base. We also had been there a couple of weeks prior in the training camp in Maizaki with the Irish, German and the French team, where it was pretty intense protocols as well.
And within the Olympic Village, because I haven't talked to too many athletes about that, like, were all your fighters free once they're in there and vaccinated to go to the canteen when they liked and to chat to whoever they wanted to in the canteen if they saw someone across or wanted to make new friends or get to know different people, or was it fairly regimented in that respect?
No, we were all together in the canteen, but when you sat down for food, it was perspex in front of you and on either side of you.
Right.
Whoever you're talking to, you had to shout a bit louder, but sort of could hear you. But yeah, everybody, were freely. Everybody in the village was tested on a daily basis, so everybody in there was COVID free.
Okay.
But as I said, we did have perspex when you're in the dining hall, which I think it held up to about 5,000 people at a time. They would all be there walking in, masks, putting on gloves to obviously handle all the stuff that you're going to be touching. Yeah, but it was pretty open, and as I said, everyone was COVID free, so it was, you're able to converse with people and talk with people and enjoy it in some ways, and in comparison to maybe other games, it definitely was a bit freer than I thought it would have been.
Yeah, right. Well, that's good to hear. And were athletes free to go and watch other events, or how did that play out in the end?
No, that was difficult. You couldn't really go to other events where you would have previously. You had to go. Your badge got you into wherever you were, whatever event you were at, and then even at that, there was times allotted to you. Like for us going to the changing room, we would go down on the bus, get off the bus, register as we came in. Then we had to go and sit in the place for the athletes. And then exactly 1 hour and 15 minutes prior to your event, you were brought to the changing room. So there was only so many people in the changing room at the same time for the go through the warm up and get your hands wrapped and all of that. So that was nice. And but everybody got used to it after the first day or two. Everybody was falling in line, and it worked out really, really well, actually. It was just completely organised down to a T as regards timing and all that.
I'm always wary of generalising people on the basis of their nationality. I think we can overdo that, but I am curious as to whether you noticed any difference in the culture or atmosphere within an American team environment at the games versus what the Irish environment is like.
Yes, there's obviously different culturally. We're probably streets and miles apart. But, you know, I'm almost 6 years over there now, so I'm pretty used to them and they're pretty used to me. So, yeah. And at the end of the day, you know, we're all looking for the similar outcomes, and there may be a different way of doing it than what maybe we do it in Ireland. But
and could you tease that out for us? What would the differences be or the comparisons be?
You know, whereas, you know, in Ireland we're probably a little bit more quieter as regards what we want to achieve, and whereas in the United States, I think they're brought up, you know, talking about being gold medalists and all of that sort of thing, you know, and being a bit more loud and brash about it than what we would be. We're a little bit more shyer in Ireland, but and that'd be it, really, you know. But at the end of the day, you know, we're both driven and obviously focused on achieving the same goals.
I always got the sense there was a great bit of fun in the Irish boxing camp. Maybe I'm wrong and I'm misreading them all and thinking they're jokers when they're very serious most of the time behind the scenes. But is that the case? Would there be kind of a bit more fun in the Irish camp, or is that very much there in the US team as well?
Oh, without doubt. I think that was part of what we did. You know, we made the times as much as we could, as much fun as possible.
Okay.
In staff, you know, and similar to that in US, you know, I've generated that as well. Maybe not to the same extent because sometimes they don't get the jokes I'm telling. Maybe I speak too fast sometimes, but they can't understand what I'm saying and what I'm talking about. Some of the language is a bit different, you know.
I can imagine. So you were saying they're successful from an American point of view, best games in a long time from a boxing perspective. We're talking 4 medals. So 3 American men claimed silver and O'Shea Jones won bronze in the welterweight. So 4 medals coming home. Are, you know, the powers that be at USA Boxing happy with that? Do you go in for a review and all that kind of stuff?
Very happy. I think, you know, obviously like everybody else with the year that we had, we didn't know where things were going to happen. And, you know, what I continually said to the powers that be, I said, this is going to happen. This game's going to happen. We need to be ready. We need to get out there because our Olympic training centre was closed since a year last March. We haven't been allowed into our Olympic training centre. So we had to go on, and we had a disused Macy's store that we took our rings out of the Olympic training centre, brought them over to there and set it up. We rented out that and we trained there. We actually, because I kept saying, look guys, this is going to happen. And there's no point in going to the Olympic Games and saying, oh, it was COVID. I said, the whole world has COVID. We've got to be physically, mentally prepared for this day when it happens. And, you know, it did happen, but we were prepared. We had done, we forced it.
Yeah.
We made it happen inside a disused Macy's store.
You're joking. Hang on, so your Olympic training centre was closed. My sense of the US had been now it was a far more relaxed situation about COVID, not least when the great Donald was in office. You know, I'm amazed your Olympic training centre was closed.
No, they were very strict on protocols, and because I suppose Colorado, we're in El Paso County, whatever the numbers were, you know, they were pretty high, I think, and then the doctor that was Dr. Finoff, who was in charge of the Olympic training centre, was very, very afraid of anybody getting COVID in there. So there was a few residents, only 7 or 8 residents, and some of them were Paralympians, and I think there was a fear that someone would pick up COVID and had, you know, compromised immune systems, which would have been devastating for anybody that was there. So it was closed, and it's not, I think it's. I heard the news before I left Tokyo that they're looking at reopening it in September.
Wow, that is very conservative. And so I'm trying to think of other indoor activities. Was the swimming program closed and affected that way? Was the gymnastics centre closed, or was boxing particularly safe?
Yes, boxing was, and all those sports you just spoke about, and wrestling were the combat sports. There, judo, taekwondo, all of those. None of us were allowed.
Wow.
Out there for training. Yeah.
And did they go and find an empty Macy's as well, or what did they do?
Yeah, wrestling went to some barn. Some guy had a big barn, and they moved. They bought all their equipment out there, and then they ended up going to some of the universities like Penn State. I think they went to Penn State and to finish off their preparation. And some of the rest of them found other places to train. It's a case of having to.
I'm amazed at that. I did not know that was the American preparation coming into the games. That's extraordinary. I mean, I would have said if all these various programs are going to train anyway, which realistically they were, then it probably made most sense to just open the training centres, the official ones, and let people away in as safe a place as possible. So that seemed like an odd one.
Yeah, that was the battle we were having, and we were saying that, it was better for our kids that are living in different cities all over America. It was better for us to have them together in the Olympic Training Centre, where it was a sterile, safe environment where we were tested regularly. It made more sense for us to be there to keep them safe, rather than leave them out in their home places where they're going out and hanging out and going to boxing gyms where there's lots of other people. Anyway, we had that battle a long time ago, and we gave up on it and ended up in Macy's.
There was you thinking the IABA were bad.
For sure.
No comment, says you.
No comment.
So what was, I mean, we're obviously very parochial, I think, when it comes to the Olympics over here. So, I mean, where you really kind of jumped into our coverage was when you were speaking after Duke Reagan's win over Kurt Walker, and you had your mask on and you were quite a bit away from the microphones, but it was fairly apparent you were very genuinely upset. That was not an easy day for you, it seemed.
Yeah, it was, I think I described it as the toughest thing I've ever done, to be honest. And I didn't realise that it was going to be. It just hit me throughout the fight. Obviously, the fight was a fantastic fight, and it was one of those that could have went either way. Kurt could have won it as easy as Duke did. It was that close. But yeah, it just hit me. 17 years of age, bringing Kurt into the senior program to one day win an Olympic medal for Ireland, and here I was in the opposite corner, being part of a group that were preventing him from winning that medal. So it just really hit home to me. And I suppose we had spent a good bit of time, like everybody else, in training camps and been away, and I hadn't been home for quite a while, and I don't know whether it was the whole emotion thing of Ireland. It was the first time at the Olympic Games that we actually came up against my own country, and yeah, the Irishness in me and the maybe missing home or whatever really hit me that day. And obviously, Kurt, I've known him since he was a kid, and he's a great young man and a tremendous talent, and has won lots of medals at different levels in Ireland. And I felt so bad for him. And then I think it was a combination of all of those things that I broke down and cried. And I went back to my dressing room and to the dressing room with everybody else, and I just went in the corner on my own and I cried. And Duke came over to me. He said, "Man, I'm sorry." He said, I know it's your country and all of that. And yeah, it was, yeah.
God. Yeah, that's very interesting, because I don't know, I just thought at this stage, 6 years removed and everything else, that you'd be almost a bit more professionally removed from the thing somehow. So that's quite interesting. It did hit you that way.
Yeah, and like I suppose at the end of the day, us boxers are supposed to be tough. I'm not really that tough at all. I'm a big softy at the end of it. Clearly,
yeah. But it's an interesting point you make as well. You haven't been at home in a long time, and I guess you're in the vicinity of Team Ireland. I mean, you're all kind of bumping into each other, I would think, there, and stopping for chats, and almost you're maybe you're like the person who arrives home when they've been away a long time, when they realise they've changed and home has changed, and geez, I'm not quite part of it the way I thought I was, kind of a moment.
Yeah, well, all the team all the coaching staff, we all work together. We're all colleagues. You know what I mean? Like, I was head coach of all of the team that was there. So, like, it was yeah, and I had, you know, being around them and the banter and the bit of crack that we would have with each other was great. Was that full flow, as you would say, you know, and a bit of slagging was going on. So we're having a bit of fun as well. I was like, it sort of was like, I'm saying to man later, I miss that. Like, I miss that banter and crack, which you don't have with someone that's not from Ireland, right? So that's probably was part of it as well, you know, missing the. Listen, we had spent 12 years working together, building a program that became one of the best sporting news in Ireland, best sporting teams in Ireland, and it was great. Look, it was fantastic to see them back on the podium again, and again, especially, you know, what Kelly Harrington has done. You know, that women's 60 kilo division has been at the Olympic Games for three Olympics, and Ireland has won 2 of them. It's a phenomenal record. You know, it's unbelievable.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razor.